Chapter 2549. At first, Lin Sun expected that heaven's punishment would be very fierce, but he didn't expect it to be so severe. Cracks appeared on his strong body, and his bones and tendons were cracking. This was a terrifying heavenly punishment. It refined every single piece of flesh in his body, about to smash his bones and destroy his body. Lin Sun summoned the abyssal sword cauldron at once, and it rose and fell with him in the thunderstorm ocean, undergoing the baptism. After an unknown period of time, Lin Sun's bones were broken many times, and his whole body was almost obliterated. He was constantly reforged and reassembled, shining brightly. He endured the pain and resisted the calamity, not daring to relax for even a moment. Boom! Lightning radiance was boundless, submerging the starry sky. As time went on, the power of heavenly punishment tribulation lightning was greater than all previous tribulations, filling up this star domain. Many stars were submerged within, exploding one after another. This was an unprecedented great calamity that was filled with terror. This scene was enough to make any peak great emperor tremble in fear. Ordinary great emperors would definitely turn into ashes at the first moment. Not long later, Lin Sun's body was completely smashed, which was the worst punishment he had ever experienced. But in next to no time, waves of the tune of the Tao resounded from within his body, and then strands of green divine radiance shot out. His shattered body and broken bones were reconstructed once more, and they were fused into one. Enduring the pain of having his body smashed to pieces, Lin Sun deduced the great Tao furnace scripture that he had cultivated all over his life, baptizing and refining himself in the thunder punishment. At the same time, the abyssal sword cauldron buzzed violently. This cauldron was extraordinary and refined. It was originally a monarch weapon that matched Lin Sun's cultivation. It was condensed from the 9 monarch weapons of Kunlun and contained the power of Order Phoenix Flame. At this moment, as it rose and fell amidst the heavenly tribulation, it was as if it was experiencing extreme tempering, causing it to become even more ancient and mysterious. Rumble. Another exceptional sea of lightning descended. The lightning was resplendent and illuminated the entire cosmos. It was as if the great explosion of the star domain had occurred. The dazzling light was 10,000 times more terrifying than the destruction of countless stars. In just a moment, Lin Sun's flesh and blood flew everywhere. His bones were broken inch by inch, his tendons and veins burst, and his blood splashed everywhere. It was a horrible scene. At the same time, the abyssal sword cauldron was also unable to withstand the bombardment. Cracks appeared on its surface, and it was on the verge of shattering into pieces. With the power of his soul and willpower, Lin Sun melted his broken body into one, reshaped it, and baptized it constantly. At the same time, the sword cauldron glowed and sprayed with a crystalline and translucent rain of violet light, and it ceaselessly repaired and tempered the body of the cauldron that was covered in cracks that were like spider webs. It was a painful ordeal. The thunder tribulation and the divine punishment were beyond Lin's expectation. A little carelessness would destroy both his body and soul. Boom! It was another great tribulation, lightning radiance dazzling, filling the sky, boundless. The most terrifying thing finally happened. The everlasting sword cauldron shattered piece by piece. They floated in the void of the cosmos and revolved around him, losing their luster. How could this be? Abyssal sword cauldron was rare in the world. It was condensed after going through a strange and unpredictable tribulation. Over the years, it was nourished and tempered by the Order Phoenix Flame. It was no longer a life weapon in the ordinary sense. But now it was broken. Tens of thousands of lightning rays and hundreds of millions of divine rays struck down, hitting these fragments with clanging sounds and a deafening collision. A rain of light splashed, and Lin Sun's body was smashed again at this moment. Blood splashed everywhere and fell on the fragments of the sword cauldron. An incredible scene appeared. Blood splashed, and all the fragments of the cauldron glowed. The sword chi of the firmament pierced through the sky, smashed the tribulation thunder, and rumbled and spread, shaking the entire starry sky. Lin Sun was surprised. The fragments of the abyssal sword cauldron were lingering with strands of violet crystal light rain. That was the power of the Order Phoenix flame. At the same time, lotus petals stuck to the fragments contained a mysterious and unpredictable aura of nirvana. This was the power of the Order of Nirvana. Lin Sun finally realized that although the body of the abyssal sword cauldron was destroyed, its original power did not dissipate. Instead, it was nourished by the Order Phoenix flame and the power of the Order Nirvana during the tempering of the Thunder Tribulation. Therefore, the abyssal sword cauldron also showed a kind of rebirth in destruction, carrying out the experience of extreme nirvana sublimation. This was the embodiment of its desire for change. Clang, clang, clang. The blood mixed with the fragments of the cauldron trembled together, emitting a roar. Every fragment of the cauldron had sword chi soaring into the sky, tearing the sea of thunder, clanging and unyielding, resisting the tribulation. And in this catastrophe, Lin Sun's body disintegrated again and again. The blood poured on the fragments of the cauldron, as if it was endowed with life, making it more spiritual. It constantly hummed softly as if it was shouting. This was a painful tribulation. Lin Sun endured the ravages and slashes of being smashed to pieces every minute and second. His flesh, broken bones, and the cauldron fragments blended together. However, although he suffered unbearable pain, his spirit and willpower had never been obliterated. This gave him the opportunity to reconstruct himself and realize his own transformation. For a moment, Lin Sun and the abyssal sword cauldron seemed to be one. They suffered destruction and reconstruction together, constantly being tempered and sublimated in extreme danger, producing a wonderful resonance, as if they were no longer separated. Boom! All of a sudden, a beam of colorful lightning struck down. Everything was destroyed, and many stars exploded. The area that was covered by the heavenly tribulation was destroyed. Lin Sun's face finally changed. Because this tribulation aimed at his spirit and willpower, he felt a sharp pain as if his spirit was being slashed by tens of thousands of swords in an instant, showing signs of collapse. This was a great disaster. If the body was destroyed, it could be rebuilt, but once the spirit was destroyed, everything would be in vain. Kill! Lin Sun roared, full of determination. The seventh major tribulation was so difficult and terrible, more than 10 times more terrible than the lawless heavens tribulation. Lin Sun was not willing to be defeated like this. He chanted sutras with his willpower and ran the Tao to the extreme, trying to reach the furnace scripture. Like an abyss and a furnace, he strengthened his Tao. His willpower was as strong as iron, and his Dharma image became more and more brilliant. Rumble, 1 bolt, 2 bolts. Countless bolts of lightning descended again, and each time it was different. In the end, his spirit and willpower were shattered many times, and it was difficult to condense into a whole again and again. At this time, Lin Sun had no thoughts at all. He forgot everything, and his mind was unprecedentedly focused, falling into the purest and most extreme state of passing the tribulation. Lin Sun didn't know whether he had passed the 100 tribulations or the 1,000 tribulations. He didn't even feel pain, and all his senses were empty. At this time, a strange change happened to him. His flesh and blood, broken bones, spirit and willpower, as well as the broken pieces of the cauldron, were mixed together, floating in the sea of thunder, being tempered, smelted into one, and carried out a stunning sacrificial refining. He was the furnace. The Order of Phoenix Flame and the Order of Nirvana lingered around him, glowing with a magnificent light rain. It looked extremely mysterious and actually blocked the continuous bombardment of the heavens tribulation. Then wait. If the other peak martial monarchs knew about this, they would be flabbergasted, unable to understand what was happening. But at this time, it really happened so mysterious. The divine sound of the great way roared. Lin Sun could not help but think of a rumor. Sovereign weapons were divided into 3 grades in 9 ranks. The 3 grades were mystery grade, spiritual grade, and divinity grade. Among them, mystery grade sovereign weapons were the most common. The Emperor's treasure tattoo, produced by one move, was divided into 3 ranks. Spiritual grade sovereign weapons were the sovereign weapons that could produce spirits. Such treasures could be regarded as top-notch and were usually controlled by ancient forces. Divinity grade sovereign weapons were the rarest, also known as Emperor's extremity weapon. They had the terrifying power to collapse a universe and destroy a big world. However, Emperor's extremity weapon could only be found by chance and was almost as ethereal as a legend. According to the rumor, Emperor's extremity weapon was a part of a great emperor's life and could last forever and be handed down. Great Emperor Ju Ing might have fallen one day, but the Emperor's Tao weapon contained their will and effort. It could shine through the ages and last for all eternity. Now, Lin Sun had a strong hunch that if the abyssal sword cauldron could withstand this refining, it was very likely to have the potential to transform into an Emperor's extremity weapon. Boom! The heavens' retribution continued, and the chaotic air was boiling, sweeping across the sea of stars. The vast chaos turned into endless thunderstorms, which became more and more terrifying. It was also at this moment that Lin Sun's state of integration with the abyssal sword cauldron was broken. This time, the abyssal sword cauldron almost turned into powder, and Lin Sun's flesh and spirit were almost obliterated. This was the most tragic moment. This kind of tribulation represented destruction. It seemed that God wanted to destroy everything, and did not allow Lin Sun and the abyssal sword cauldron to survive. However, in this boundless and terrible destruction, there was a new power which cut through the vast chaos and shone down from the depths of the sky. Lin Sun had no fear, no anxiety, and appeared to be in a state of emptiness. All thoughts, emotions, ideas were gone. After going through so many tribulations and wandering between life and death, he was neither sad nor happy. There is only an instinctive will to operate the Tao and to deduce the Tao and Dharma. Not afraid of life and death. Not afraid of hardships. Only my Tao would grow and multiply. Lin Sun's will became purer and firmer. The abyssal sword cauldron had turned into powder, and his spirit and body were in tatters, but they contained the hope of survival and were about to undergo a qualitative change. This great tribulation lasted for an unusually long time and was different from the past. In the end, an incredible phenomenon emerged in the vast sea of thunder. Bolts of thunder retribution condensed and turned into a primordial world that seemed like the beginning of chaos. Clear and turbid were divided, and heaven and earth were firstborn. All things were born, including the sky, the earth, the sun, the moon, the stars, and the universe. Then all kinds of gods, demons, creatures, birds, and insects emerged, whistling in the primordial world. These were bolts of lightning, not real creatures. Kuanpung spread its wings and soared up to 90,000 miles. Gods and demons roared and fought in the universe, smashing the sun, the moon, and the stars at this most dangerous moment. Lin Sun seemed to be completely unaware of it. He sat there with his legs crossed, and his flesh, body, and spirit were constantly broken and recombined, swallowing and spitting out lightning. No thoughts, no thoughts, no fear. Far away, the cyan sparrow stood there in a daze. Around its body, a magnificent and dazzling red divine chain was lingering, dispelling the power of thunder retribution that was constantly surging in the starry sky. Literature Hall. Chapter 2550. Boom! Expanse after expanse of seas of lightning descended, and they surged through this expanse of the universe as if they intended to obliterate the world. After an unknown period of time, an incredible scene appeared. The sword cauldron was finally formed. There were all types of wondrous patterns on its surface. There were galaxies swirling about, deities roaring from the primal chaos, releasing rumbling noises. Flowers, birds, fish, and insects adorned it, while the sun and moon were arranged in an orderly manner. They formed mysterious markings of the Tao, and there were numerous ancient and grand scriptures inscribed on it. They glowed brilliantly and revealed the profundities of the grand Tao. It was the great Tao furnace scripture. Besides this, within the sword cauldron, the sword of the Tao floated up and down, and it emitted clanging sounds. The body of the sword seemed even more simple and ancient, and it was a divine object that concealed itself and was indescribably obscure. Dang, dang, dang. The tribulation lightning struck down, but it was blocked by the sword cauldron one by one. Dazzling arcs of lightning shot out and flowed like a waterfall. Vaguely, the sword cauldron seemed to possess a true spirituality and life. Various mysterious and unfathomable patterns ceaselessly surged into appearance around the sword cauldron. Plants, fish, insects, mountains, rivers, all phenomena, the universe, the sun, moon, stars, fiend gods, all of this caused the cauldron to seem even more boundless. It was just a cauldron, but it seemed to contain an entire universe. However, Lin Sun knew nothing about it. He didn't have any other thoughts, only relying on his instincts to deduce the Tao and repair his flesh. Divine light shone resplendently as he sat there, chanting scriptures. When the abyssal sword cauldron was formed, Lin Sun's transformation had reached the most critical moment. Boom! His body was reconstructed, his sea of blood surged, and he tempered his body and cultivation to the absolute peak in one go. It was like he'd broken through the barrier of a natural chasm, passed through an extraordinary threshold, and stepped into the void refinement realm in one go. At the same time, the abyssal sword cauldron was also rumbling. The various scenes and Tao patterns inscribed on it were all trembling as though they were about to come to life. It was even to the extent that Shi could hear the rumbling of the Tao. It seemed as if it was coming from the chaos at the beginning of time, and it was dignified, vast, and grand. Rumble, a myriad of streaks of lightning poured down, cleansing this cauldron, causing it to become even more dignified and majestic. It emitted an inviolable aura, as if it could crush the sky and exist eternally. The abyssal sword cauldron buzzed incessantly, and from the body of the cauldron, a rain of light rained down. Each strand was comparable to a peerlessly sharp sword chi, capable of cutting through the sun, moon, and stars. At this moment, it had undergone a complete transformation, and its might was unparalleled. The tribulation, lightning in the heavens, and the earth were unable to harm it in the slightest. As the sword cauldron rushed up, it devoured billions of lightning bolts. In a short moment, it swept away almost all the lightning in the sky. Open! At the same time, Lin Sun stood up and roared. The star field moved, and his tall figure rushed out of hundreds of millions of rays of light. The power of the Emperor realm was overwhelming. He punched the sky and hit the last light of tribulation. Boom! This expanse of the universe fell in a violent unrest. The boundless sea of tribulation, lightning, seemed as if it was crushed by the hand of the heavens, and it rumbled as it exploded, causing the torrents that shot out to spread out and obliterated countless great stars. At this moment, Lin Sun's imposing figure was like a beam of light, tearing through the ages and stunning the world. Bang! In the extreme distance, a dark bronze mirror shattered before the azure sparrow. It couldn't help but gasp. Originally, it intended to use the bronze mirror to inscribe everything it saw before it and transform it into a screen of light that existed forever. But never had it imagined that this tribulation couldn't be remembered at all, and it seemed as if the secrets of the heavens couldn't be revealed. Withdraw! Lin Sun shouted from extremely far away. No matter if it was his body, soul, willpower, or the abyssal sword cauldron, they were like a whale swallowing the sea as they ceaselessly swallowed the dispersed light of tribulation. The vast might of the Emperor realm spread out, covering the heavens and covering the earth. Crossing the threshold of the 7th level of the Emperor realm caused Lin Sun and the abyssal sword cauldron to undergo a qualitative transformation, and they'd stepped onto the heavenly stairway and realized the sublimation of their lives. In a sense, the seventh level of the Emperor realm was like stepping into a completely new realm for Lin Sun, and it was completely different from before. It's over. Lin Sun had ascended to the peak of the seventh level, and he stood alone in the starry sky at this moment. The tribulation lightning vanished, and the numerous great stars in this expanse of the starry sky exploded into pieces. Only now did it return to silence, and starlight sprinkled down and illuminated the surroundings. A silver waterfall covered the sky, and boundless starlight sprinkled down and condensed towards him, baptizing his body and replenishing the huge amount of energy he'd consumed. In the end, everything dispersed, and only Lin Sun stood alone in the starry sky. The abyssal sword cauldron floated above his head, and millions of strands of Tao light and divine brilliance fell down, causing him to look blurry and unreal. Looking at it from afar, the starry sky was cold, and the universe was vast. He was all alone, and it seemed as if he'd endured the loneliness of eternity, indistinct and indistinct. But the feeling he gave others was like that of a ruler who swallowed the universe and reigned supreme since ancient times. This tribulation had taken a long time, and it was unprecedentedly dangerous. His soul, body, flesh, tendons, and bones had been shattered countless times, and every time it was reconstructed, it was no less than experiencing a rebirth of life and death. Similarly, the abyssal sword cauldron was probably the same. Lin Sun sat cross-legged and started to consolidate his new cultivation. The biggest change in the seventh level of the Emperor realm was that a universe had been opened up in the Emperor realm. The sun, moon, and stars circulated in it, shining brilliantly, and all kinds of auspicious lights of the Great Way fell down, which complemented and merged with the Emperor realm, forming a unique and perfect harmony. At this level, the practitioner's cultivation was full of divine light, and his Dharma form was perfect. His body and spirit were wonderful, and he was extremely precise and thorough, returning emptiness to truth. In fact, it was tantamount to beginning to explore the mysteries of emptiness and reality, existence and non-existence, truth and emptiness. At the same time, Lin Sun felt that the abyssal sword cauldron had also undergone a new transformation. The Order Phoenix flame seemed to be completely shattered, turning into wisps of power and merging into the cauldron. Around the cauldron, there appeared the eternal universe and all kinds of phenomena in the sky. There were mysterious Taoist patterns floating and sinking, and there was a kind of boundless spirit that could suppress the past, present, and future. In the sword cauldron, the Taoist sword was simple and unadorned, but it gave people the feeling that as long as it was born, it could split the world and run through the 9 heavens and 10 earths. In addition, the Nirvana order turned into a lotus pattern floating in it, and the 9 Taoist patterns of the netherworld loomed, shining with inexplicable luster. More than a dozen quietus fire of order were firmly suppressed in the deepest part of the cauldron. The whole cauldron gave Lin Sun a kind of symbiotic feeling, as if it had become a part of his life. One day later, Lin Sun woke up from meditation and stood up. The green sparrow had already flashed over, and she said, "Hung Tianxua, that old geezer, would probably never have imagined that the 9th area that was originally sufficient to consign you to eternal damnation would instead allow you to realize a completely new transformation in your cultivation." Heng Tianshuo, a cold light flashed in Lin Sun's eyes, and he said, "Fortune and misfortune depend on each other, and life and death are unpredictable. When I go back this time, I will send this old thing to hell." After saying that, he took out his identity certificate. There was a rain of light, but there was no path leading to the outside world. Cyan Sparrow shouted at once, "Heng Tianshou, he obviously tampered with your identity certificate. Even if you survive in the 9th district, it's impossible for you to leave." Lin Sun's heart was surging with killing intent, but he looked calm. He put away the identity certificate and looked around. After a while, he thought of something. "Clang!" In the abyssal sword cauldron, a Taoist sword rose to the sky, like an invincible light, and tore a huge crack in the collapsed and empty universe. Cyan Sparrow was stunned. How could this work? Let's go. Lin Sun rushed out first. In the universe outside the world of the trial, waves of void appeared one after another, and in the void leading to the world of the trial, there began to appear one after another. Feng Junlin, Yu Duqiu, Xiang Xiaoyuan, and other peerless figures took the lead to come out. Heng Zhan, the guard commander of the Castellan mansion, and a group of soldiers stood indifferently in the distance, watching the exit. They had been waiting here for a month. As the void flickered, many Emperor Realm figures returned one after another. Some looked gloomy, some relieved, some depressed, and some longed for more. They all had different expressions. Those who collected enough stellar source were full of smiles, while those who didn't were disappointed. Compared to those who came out alive, more people had died in the world of the trial. As time went by, there were experts coming out one after another, but the number was very small. In the end, there were only about 100 people who came out alive. One should know that there were more than 600 Emperor Realm figures who participated in the trial this time. Did Ling Xuanzi really die? Someone couldn't help but ask. They were about to return to the City of Beginnings, but Ling Xuanzi still hadn't shown up, which surprised many people. It's time. Let's go back to the city. Heng Zhan ordered. Wait, what's the harm in waiting a little longer? It's not like we're in a hurry, Yu Duqiu said with a frown. I've brought many people to participate in the trial over the years. Every time this time comes, it's destined that no one will come out alive. It's a waste of time to wait any longer, Heng Zhan said coldly. What if someone is still alive? Yu Duqiu asked. Heng Zhan said expressionlessly. The trial is over. My duty is to bring you out, not waste time here. Yu Duqiu couldn't help but sigh. He had a glimmer of hope, but who would have thought that a miracle wouldn't happen? It looks like Ling Xuanzi has really died. That's for the best. Someone laughed with a cold expression. Heng Zhan spoke abruptly when he heard this. That's true. In my opinion, Ling Xuanzi can't dream of making another appearance in this world. He was the only one who knew that Lin Sun would not be able to leave alive after entering the 9th region. Boom! Suddenly, an earth-shattering sound rang out. The space in the distance exploded, and a figure like a god tore through the sky, teleporting over, shaking the heavens. What? He's out. Everyone was shocked. The person was shrouded in divine light. His figure was tall, and his aura was as strong as the abyss. He stepped through the void and came out. It was Lin Sun. However, his aura was extremely terrifying at the moment. It was as if he was a god that descended to the mortal world. It was shocking. Heng Zhan, in particular, thought his eyes were playing tricks on him. He was just saying that Lin Sun would not be able to come out alive. Now that he saw Lin Sun coming out, he couldn't help but scream. How is this possible? He couldn't believe it. P.S. Should we add more updates tonight? Please spend your monthly votes. Literature Hall. Chapter 2551. Why not? Could it be that Commander Heng Zhan already knew that my nameplate had been tampered with? Even if I could survive in a 9th area, I wouldn't be able to get out at all? Lin Sun's cold eyes locked on Heng Zhan with terrifying power. The crowd was restless, and many people's faces changed. The 9th area, a long time ago, even immortals would die if they entered it. So in the recent 10,000 years, no one was assigned there. Because everyone knew that entering it was no different from courting death. But Ling Xuanzi was assigned to the 9th area. Many people soon realized that it was Heng Tianshua's revenge when they thought of the grudge between Lin Sun and Wen Shaoing. Feng Junlin, Xiang Xiaoyuan, and Yu Duqiu, who had already known that Lin Sun was in the 9th area, also changed their faces slightly at this moment, because they now knew that Lin Sun was not only tricked, but also tampered with his identity card. Heng Tianshua and Wen Shaoing are too cruel. They couldn't calm down and looked at Lin Sun with strange eyes. Under such circumstances, it was undoubtedly a miracle that Lin Sun could get out alive. Heng Zhan's face darkened, and he scolded, Ridiculous! If your identity card was tampered with, How could you get out of the trial world? It doesn't matter if you don't admit it, because I don't intend to argue with dirty and despicable people like you. Lin Sun's eyes were deep, and his expression was cold. How dare you? A soldier shouted. You framed the city lord in public and dared to speak rudely. Ling Xuanzi, don't you want to leave here alive? Lin Sun sneered and slashed out a sword chi. Crack! The soldier waved his bronze halberd to resist, but it was cut into pieces in an instant. He couldn't block it at all, and the armor in front of him exploded. His whole body was split into two halves, and blood spurted out. Everyone was shocked. It was too fast. From the soldier's hostility to Lin Sun's sword, it was all done in a flash. Overbearing sword. Blood splattered everywhere, and the sword chi tore through the sky with a rumbling sound. The scene was silent. This scene sent a chill down everyone's spine. Everyone looked at Lin Sun. Killing a soldier in public, especially a soldier of the Castellan mansion, was the most aggressive provocation with blood. Since ancient times, none of the martial emperors in the vast thousand battle domains dared to provoke the forces guarding the immortal heaven pass. Although Lin Sun killed a soldier, he represented the dignity of the Castellan mansion. All this was enough to prove that the furious Lin Sun had completely thrown caution to the wind and was going to set off a bloody revenge. Ling Xuanzi, do you know the consequences of doing this? Some soldiers stepped forward and pointed at Lin Sun with bronze spears or long swords, showing a piercing killing intent. This is beginning city's territory. No matter where you come from, no matter what your identity is, you will pay the price for violating the city's rules, shouted a soldier. Puff! Suddenly, a bloody light flew up, and an illusory sword chi flashed and pierced through the soldier's glabella, causing blood to splatter everywhere. Lin Sun said indifferently, You are just a bunch of servants. The matter between me and Hung Tianxua has nothing to do with you. If you don't want to die, you'd better not bark. Otherwise, I don't mind killing all of you. He has rebelled and killed people here. He disobeyed the rules of the Castellan mansion and is the enemy of all of us. Everyone attack together and kill him. Everyone will be rewarded. Hung Zhan's face was livid, and he shouted loudly, which resounded throughout the scene and pinned a big hat on Lin Sun. If such a crime was confirmed, he would be regarded as a traitor by the 49 immortal heaven passes. Boom! A group of soldiers attacked, their spears swept, and their swords whistled. Every one of them could be said to be the best of the best. Sharp, murderous, and shocking. In fact, the origin of these soldiers was not simple. They were all martial emperors who crossed the starry sky and roamed the vast thousand battle domains. However, because they disobeyed the rules of the city, they were suppressed by the immortal emperor clan. In order to survive, they became soldiers of the city and served the Castellan mansion for generations. Haha, what a tyrannical guard of the Castellan mansion. You have the power to kill whoever you want. Lin Sun laughed. In front of him, the void shattered, and a Dao sword swept out, shaking the surrounding space and sweeping across. The group of soldiers who rushed forward were all blown away by the sword. They were like chickens and dogs, and the weapons in their hands were crushed. A rain of light scattered. Once the sword was out, it was like a hot knife through butter. You dare to resist and become the enemy of all the experts in the city. A soldier roared, his expression ferocious. He called for everyone to charge forward, but his words came to an abrupt stop. The incomparably sharp sword chi turned into a dazzling bolt of lightning and killed him. The sword chi cut through his forehead, and a bloody wound spread all the way to his lower abdomen. Then, with a puff, blood spurted out a few feet, and his body was split into two halves. After that, as Lin Sun made his move, the nearby soldiers who rushed up were all easily killed. A thick rain of blood splashed, dyeing the starry sky red. The scene was extremely horrifying. The nearby Emperor Realm figures who came out of the trial world all had their hearts in turmoil and stayed far away. Many people were shocked. They couldn't believe that Lin Sun's method was so overbearing and iron-blooded. This was too strong. Ling Xuanzi, what do you want to do? Hung Zhan couldn't calm down. and his face was extremely ugly. Lin Sun said coldly, "What I want to do, didn't you see it? Blood for blood, a tooth for a tooth. You really want to be the enemy of the Castellan mansion and the entire great thousand-battle domain?" Hung Zhan asked coldly. He had been able to keep his composure and didn't make a move. "How can I be an enemy of the world when I kill some scum? You open your mouth and shut your mouth, you old thing. Your heart is terrible." Lin Sun's eyes became colder and colder. "They're the guards of the city. If the Castellan knows that you killed them so wantonly, he will definitely not let you go. He will definitely kill you personally." Hung Zhan's voice was filled with threat. "Also, don't forget that this beginning city is now under the control of my Hung family." Many people's hearts tightened. The immortal Emperor clan, Hung family, was a great force in the eternal world. Looking at the entire beginning city, which Emperor Realm figure dared to offend them? However, Lin Sun smiled, but that smile was emotionless as he said, "What a coincidence. I'm going to find Hung Tianxua to settle the score. Why don't you lead the way?" Hung Zhan's face completely changed. He didn't expect that Lin Sun would not even put the Hung family in his eyes. "Quick, attack together and kill him," Hung Zhan roared. A group of soldiers rushed out from behind, armed and full of murderous intent. Lin Sun stepped forward and did not dodge. Instead, he formed a sword with his fingers and slashed out in the void. Swish! With one slash, more than a dozen Emperor weapons shattered. With a poof, the leader was even sent flying. Then, with a bang, the soldier's body split into 4 or 5 pieces and directly exploded. Scarlet blood splattered and flew in all directions. Before the power of this slash dissipated, Lin Sun's second, third, fourth slash had already been slashed out in succession. Rumble, this area seemed to be crushed and fell into a violent turbulence. Brilliant and vast sword chi intersected, bringing about scarlet blood rain. How was this a battle? This was clearly a massacre. The great emperors who were participating in the trial in the distance were so shocked that their scalps went numb and their hearts trembled. Too strong. The killing power that Lin Sun displayed at this moment made even them tremble in fear. Feng Junlin, Yu Duqiu, Xiang Xiaoyuan, and the others were all shocked. They were all keenly aware that Lin Sun had broken through. Now, he was already a peak 7th rank Emperor Realm existence. When they thought about how his combat strength was already heaven-defying and abnormal when he was at 6th rank Emperor Realm, how terrifying would he be after breaking through? In a few blinks of the eye, all the soldiers in the field were killed. The smell of blood was like a vast ocean, soaking in this cold, starry sky. It was a shocking sight. "Ling Xuanzi, are you trying to rebel?" Hung Zhan was furious, and his eyes were about to pop out of their sockets. As a member of the Hung clan, he was high and mighty in the past, and no one dared to disrespect him. But now someone had killed his soldiers repeatedly. This made him even dare not to believe it. "Rebel? Just because you're from the Hung clan, you really think you're the ruler?" As his words sounded, Lin Sun had already charged over. At this moment, everyone was shocked because no one thought that Lin Sun would really dare to attack Hung Zhan. This was equivalent to saying that he didn't even care about the threat of the Hung clan. "Rise!" Hung Zhan roared, and a burning red talisman spread out. The Emperor's aura was monstrous, covering the sky and earth. It contained the sun, moon, and stars as if it was a real universe. This was an extremely powerful and terrifying Emperor weapon. The materials used were rare and precious enough to make a 9th realm ancestor drool. Wisps of terrifying aura overflowed from the red talisman. It was as heavy as hundreds of millions of caddies, and it pressed down on the starry sky as if it was about to collapse. Lin Sun's expression did not change as he directly reached out to grab the red talisman. He was not afraid of the overwhelming pressure at all. He wanted to tear the sky apart with a single hand. Boom! All the Tao lights were scattered. Lin Sun's large hand was like a hot knife through butter as it grabbed the red talisman with a tyrannical power. "Suppress!" Hung Zhan roared. This red talisman refined a starry sky world. It contained all kinds of unfathomable mysteries and could deduce incredible power. It could imprison ghosts and gods and kill ninth realm ancestors. However, no matter how many divine abilities and Tao techniques he had, Lin Sun just pushed his palm forward. His 5 fingers were like a claw, crushing all the power and destroying it continuously. This made Hung Zhan so shocked that his eyeballs almost fell out. He exhausted his limit and pushed the power of the red talisman to the extreme. A terrifying scene happened. Boom! In the red talisman, burning stars appeared and rushed out. They slowly rotated like a burning river of stars and suppressed Lin Sun. The fire was like a sea, rumbling. Everyone gasped. At this moment, the majestic ancient stars filled the sky and filled the sky. They also felt threatened and subconsciously retreated far away again. Bang! 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 With a series of bursting sounds, Lin Sun waved his fist and smashed all the burning stars into pieces, exploding them in the void. The unparalleled power of the fist made the red talisman tremble violently as if it was about to disintegrate. Hung Zhan's body was cold, and his hair stood on end. He was an existence who was only one step away from entering the first realm ancestor realm. He came from the eternal world and mastered all kinds of supreme secret techniques. He was far from ordinary ninth realm ancestors. But now, in the battle with Lin Sun, he almost had no power to resist. Boom! Amidst the ear-piercing sound, Lin Sun reached out and grabbed the red talisman in his hand, completely suppressing it. Hung Zhan coughed up blood, and his face was pale. He completely realized that something was wrong and did not dare to hesitate. He turned and tore through the sky, wanting to escape. But Lin Sun was faster. His figure flashed and rushed forward. His palm and fingers were like a cage of the great Tao, enveloping him with a rumbling sound. In an instant, Hung Zhan was completely suppressed like a bird in a cage. Witnessing this scene, the whole place was silent, and the heroes were shocked. P.S. Thank you, Brother Bandit and the others for your gifts and support. Tomorrow, to express my gratitude, I will continue to update. Chapter 2552. Hung Zhan was suppressed. The surroundings were deathly silent. Not a single sound could be heard. Even Yu Duqiu, Xiang Xiaoyuan, and Feng Junlin were shocked by this scene. They knew very well how terrible Hung Zhan was. If they were in Hung Zhan's position, it would be impossible for them to defeat him without using their trump cards. But Lin Sun suppressed Hung Zhan in an overbearing manner with his own cultivation. How could they remain calm after such a comparison? As for the others present, they were all dumbfounded. It was already a miracle that Lin Sun could walk out of the 9th zone of the trial world alive. But now, he directly killed more than 20 soldiers guarding the city and captured Hung Zhan from the Hung family. Crack! Lin Sun broke Hung Zhan's knees and imprisoned him. He knelt on the ground and then looked at everyone present. Everyone who was swept by his eyes became stiff and uncomfortable. What did this guy want to do? In this silence, Lin Sun smiled slightly, revealing his snow-white teeth, and said, "Everyone, I have a hunch that the city of beginning will be in chaos. If you want to leave the city as soon as possible, I can help you." Everyone was stunned and a little confused. What was going on? He was killing people just now. Now, he wanted to help others? What kind of help? Yu Duqiu was interested. Good question. Lin Sun smiled brightly. He turned over his palm, and more than 30 pieces of stellar source appeared. I believe many of you have not collected 10 pieces of stellar source. I happen to have a lot of surplus here. I can exchange with you, Lin Sun said with a smile. According to the market price, one piece of stellar source costs 500,000 eternal void source crystals. I can make it cheaper, only 400,000 eternal void source crystals. Of course, you can also exchange it with Underworld Pearl. Yu Duqiu, others, all of them had a confused expression on their faces. Was this still the ruthless, cold-blooded, and ruthless man just now? He wanted to talk about business in the blink of an eye. This contrast was really unexpected. Does no one want it? Lin Sun asked. Finally, someone plucked up his courage and said, "I need 3 pieces of stellar source." Lin Sun readily agreed and completed the transaction smoothly. With someone taking the lead, quite a number of people were tempted. Stellar essence was related to whether they could leave starting city and continue moving towards the eternal true world. There was no way the emperors who had not managed to gather enough stellar essence could resist this temptation. Moreover, he could buy a piece of stellar source for 400,000 eternal void source crystals. Even if he could not use it, he could sell it for 500,000 eternal void source crystals. All of a sudden, the stellar source that Lin Sun had collected became a hot commodity. Some were exchanged with eternal void source crystals, while others were exchanged with underworld pearls. "Are you short of money, Brother Ling?" Yuduchio couldn't help but ask. He felt that Lin Sun's action was a bit embarrassing. "Yes," Lin Sun answered without hesitation. Yuduchio didn't know what to say. "You've killed so many guards and captured Hung Zhan. Aren't you worried that Hung Tianxuo will take revenge on you after you return to Starting City?" Xiang Xiaoyuan asked. Her voice was clear and melodious. "Hang Tianxuo should be the one to worry about," said Lin Sun. Xiang Xiaoyuan couldn't help but stare at Lin Sun for a long time. She really couldn't figure out who gave Lin Sun the confidence to declare war against the city lord. After a while, Lin Sun sold all the excess stellar essence in his hands. He got more than a dozen underworld pearls and millions of first-class eternal void source crystals. After doing all of this, Lin Sun didn't waste any time. He brought Hung Zhan with him and flew towards Starting City. The others also followed him when they saw this. Everyone had a premonition that a storm would rise in Starting City of the first pass of immortality as soon as Lin Sun returned. Starting City, City Lord's mansion. In a big hall, when Xiaoheng paced back and forth with his hands clasped behind his back. His expression was uncertain, and he couldn't calm down. Today was the day the trial would end. Although when Xiaoheng was very sure that Lin Sun would not be able to return after entering District Number 9, he couldn't be completely at ease before he confirmed Lin Sun's death. Hung Tianxuo sat casually on the main seat nearby. He was fiddling with a beast bone that was as white as snow. He was calm and composed. "Nephew, there's always calmness when there's a big event. Moreover, it's just eradicating a peak great emperor who came from the starry ancient path. It's not a big deal. There's no need to worry about it." Hung Tianxuo glanced at Wen Xiaoheng and shook his head with a smile. Immortals who entered District Number 9 would never return. Moreover, Ling Xuanzi's identity certificate had been tampered with. It was already destined that he would never return alive. "Uncle, it's not that I'm impatient. It's just that Ling Xuanzi is extremely cunning and cunning. I've already suffered in his hands twice. I really don't dare to underestimate him anymore." Wen Xiaoheng said with a gloomy expression. The first time was in the Departed Soul region. He was almost killed and managed to survive with his life-saving trump card. The second time was in Tianyu Tower. If it wasn't for Granny Shui saving him, he wouldn't have survived either. These two experiences were like nightmares for Wen Xiaoheng. How could he still dare to underestimate Lin Sun? He's still too young. Hung Tianxuo couldn't help but sigh. Even if Wen Xiaoheng had cultivated for thousands of years, he was still lacking in the eyes of an old man like Hung Tianxuo who had lived for tens of thousands of years. Wen Xiaoheng was just about to say something. Hung Tianxuo's sleeves fluttered and shattered jade tokens appeared. When he saw these cracked, dim, and lifeless jade tokens, the face of Hung Tianxuo, who was calm and composed earlier, had turned gloomy and unsightly to the extreme. When Xiaoheng discerned the origins of those jade tokens with a single glance, he knew that it was a restriction treasure that controlled the guards of the governor's estate. Once it shattered, it meant that the guards were in trouble. "Uncle, what's going on?" When Xiaoheng's voice was strange. "Didn't you say that there's always calmness when there's a big event? Aren't you exasperated as well?" Something unexpected happened in the trial. The soldiers who followed Hung Zhan to the trial world have all died. Not a single one of them survived. Hung Tianxuo took a deep breath while divine light shot out from his eyes. It was extremely shocking. If I'm not wrong, this matter is probably related to Ling Xuanzi. When Xiaoheng's heart shook violently, he couldn't be bothered to ridicule Hung Tianxuo any longer, and his expression changed indeterminately. "That's impossible. That's the 9th area. How could he possibly walk out alive? Hung Tianshua's gaze was terrifyingly icy cold, while his entire body emanated a terrifying, imposing aura. It caused Wen Xiaoheng to feel suffocated, and he realized that this old geezer was completely infuriated. An accident has already occurred. Now isn't the time to consider all of this. As he spoke, Hung Tianshua looked out of the hall. "Men, my lord." A boy appeared outside the hall. Hung Tianshua's voice was gloomy. "Tell those 7 old fogies that I'll remove the restriction on the soul of anyone who kills Ling Xuanzi and return his freedom." "Yes." The boy received his orders and left. "Uncle, it has already come to this, yet you still don't intend to make a move yourself?" When Xiaoheng couldn't help but ask. He was unable to understand. Hung Tianshua's gaze was deep, and he spoke with an expressionless face. "The son of a noble family will not sit under the tree. I won't rashly take a risk before I figure out Ling Xuanzi's trump card. But who are those 7 old fellows? Can they do it?" When Xiaoheng was extremely anxious in his heart. Hung Tianshua glanced at Wen Xiaoheng and said, "In the countless years since the ancient times until now, there have been many insufferably arrogant and ruthless figures that disregarded the order of the city and caused trouble in the city without the slightest hesitation. In the end, all of them were suppressed without exception. Those that didn't have much value were executed at the first possible moment. On the other hand, those that were valuable had their soul restrictions placed on them, and they were reduced to soldiers of the city. They could only struggle on while at death's door and obey the control of our eternal emperor clans. Those 7 old fellows I spoke of are the most valuable group of ruthless figures in the countless years of the past. If they join forces and attack, then even I would have to utilize my full strength in order to suppress them." When Xiaoheng couldn't help but gasp when he heard this. He understood how formidable Hung Tianshua was. As the ancestor of a Dao, he was able to easily annihilate a 9th realm ancestor with a flip of his hand, and he was boundlessly terrifying. But Hung Tianshua actually had to use his full strength to deal with those 7 old fellows, and it was obvious how formidable they were. When Xiaoheng felt reassured when he thought up to here. "We'll just wait here for news. In this way, we can attack and retreat at will, and we don't have to worry about any mishaps or dangers occurring." At this moment, Hung Tianshua had calmed down and was steady like a mountain. When Xiaoheng nodded instinctively. Today was the day the trials ended. Starting City was also bustling with noise and excitement. Many people craned their necks in anticipation. They were waiting to see how many tyrannical characters would survive the dangerous and bloody trial world this time. A teleportation formation stood towering at the central area of the city. This place was filled with a sea of people since a long time ago, and not even a drop of water could trickle through. "All of you disperse. The city governor's estate is going to capture the villain Ling Xuanzi today. Anyone that dares to interfere in this matter will be killed without mercy. All you fuck off." Suddenly, a loud shout resounded like a thunderclap, and it rumbled through the heavens and the earth. Subsequently, group after group of armored guards that emanated murderous intent soared through the sky, and the baleful aura they emanated was simply like a raging storm. The area near the teleportation formation was in extreme chaos, and everyone's expressions turned grim as they left in panic. It wasn't long before the surroundings became deserted, and besides over 100 soldiers with terrifying auras, there was no one else here. These soldiers stood on guard at the side and waited in formation. Their killing intent converged together, and it threw the surroundings into chaos, causing even some Emperor Realm figures to be terrified. No one dared to approach. Ling Xuanzi hasn't even walked out of the trial world, yet he's already been put on the wanted list. He's definitely done something great to incur the wrath of the city governor's estate. Looks like a storm of blood will arise in Genesis City today. After the other areas of the city noticed this scene, many people guessed and discussed animatedly, and all of them were surprised and bewildered. How many years had it been since such an uproar like today had occurred in Genesis City? What exactly did Ling Xuanzi do? Time slowly passed by. Amidst the oppressive and murderous atmosphere, a strange fluctuation suddenly arose from the silent teleportation formation. It was like the curtains to the arrival of a storm had been drawn slowly at this moment. Chapter 25:53. The ancient transmission array fluctuated with an obscure aura of space. Lin Sun, Feng Junlin, Xiang Xiaoyuan, Euduchio, and other emperors appeared almost at the same time. In the past, every time the trial ended, it would attract the attention of everyone. It was a spectacular scene. Those who came back alive would be the center of attention and be admired and sought after by everyone. But today, it was very different. The street was solemn and oppressive. Soldiers in black armor formed groups and sealed off the area. Almost at the first time, all eyes and killing intent locked on Lin Sun like a tide. The terrifying pressure that seemed to be real made the experts who returned with Lin Sun change their expressions and tense up. Sure enough, a big storm was going to happen today. We are here to capture Ling Xuanzi. Those who have nothing to do with us, please leave. A leader said coldly. He held a silver halberd and looked majestic and powerful. His whole body was filled with killing intent that disturbed the wind and clouds. Immediately, the people around Lin Sun left in a hurry. No one wanted to get involved in this matter for fear of being killed. Ling Xuanzi, good luck. If you die in this city, I will be a little disappointed. Feng Junlin glanced at Lin Sun and left with his people. The meaning in his words was very thought-provoking. Lin Sun glanced around calmly and did not say a word. Brother Ling, do you need help? As long as you agree, I can fight for a chance of survival for you. Xiang Xiaoyuan suddenly sent a voice projection. This beautiful, elegant woman carrying the purple and green twin sabers on her back had unexpectedly lent a helping hand at this moment. She was noble. Although she came from the boundless world, her mother was a big shot in a big force in the eternal world. She had the confidence to say such words. No, thank you. Lin Sun smiled and refused. Xiang Xiaoyuan did not insist. She only took a deep look at Lin Sun and turned to leave with Euduchio. Soon, only Lin Sun was left. He stood all alone before the teleportation formation while his surroundings were surrounded by layer upon layer of soldiers, and such a scene caused the hearts of countless spectators to feel cold and despair. However, his expression was calm and indifferent as usual. The murderous aura in the heavens and the earth seethed, and it pressed down upon space to the point it seemed to have frozen. The surroundings were deathly silent, and the atmosphere was tense to the extreme. Ling Xuanzi, do you know your crimes? The commander in the lead spoke in an icy cold voice that rumbled like thunder and broke the silence. Boom! All the soldiers raised their weapons and pointed them at Lin Sun. The incomparably violent killing intent gathered together, making the whole world seem to collapse and make a mournful sound. This made people shudder with fear. However, Lin Sun seemed to be completely unaware of this, and his gaze swept ceaselessly as he asked with a frown. Where's Hung Tianxua? It's already at this time. So why hasn't he made an appearance? Instead, he's sending all of you servants to your deaths? His casual words caused the people who were watching this scene in secret to gasp, and their hearts trembled. This Ling Xuanzi, he actually directly declared war on the city lord. Where did he get the confidence to say such words in this heavily surrounded place? You're such a stubborn bastard. Even if you repent and atone for your sins now, it's useless. Even if you kneel down and beg for mercy, you'll be killed without mercy. The commander's face darkened, his killing intent boiling. The other soldiers were also brimming with murderous intent, ready to strike. It was also at this time that Lin Sun looked at the commander and the soldiers present, with a touch of disdain on his lips. Bang! The next moment, Lin Sun raised his hand, and Hung Zhan, who was captured by him, knelt down in the void. His body was bathed in blood, and his hair was disheveled. Lord Hung Zhan, everyone's pupils constricted, and their faces changed greatly. Hung Zhan's identity was very special. He came from the Hung family, and in the city lord's mansion, he was the right-hand man of Hung Tianxua. But now, he was reduced to a prisoner and suffered great humiliation Ling Xuanzi, you really don't want to live. Put him down. A soldier shouted angrily. Puff. Blood splattered. No one expected that Lin Sun had already made a move before the soldier finished his words. He flicked his finger, and a wisp of sword chi swept out, directly piercing the man's forehead. Blood splattered everywhere. At this moment, everyone's scalp was numb. All of this happened too suddenly. Who dared to kill people in the city? This violated the city rules, and he had to pay with his life. Who dared to imagine that Lin Sun would act so decisively and without scruples? In particular, his peerless sword was so sharp that even an Emperor Realm expert was killed in an instant. There was a commotion in the field. Those who were watching in the dark felt their blood boil and their scalps tingled. There was no doubt that Ling Xuanzi was planning to completely break up with them and set off a storm of blood. Arg, the soldiers of the city lord's mansion were provoked on the spot. Many of them shouted and roared. All of this happened too suddenly. No one expected that Lin Sun would kill people in public. In short, those who stand in my way will die. At this moment, Lin Sun slapped Hung Zhan's head. With a bang, blood splattered everywhere, and Hung Zhan was turned into ashes. This scene completely made the eyes of the commander turn red, and he roared, "Go! Kill this bastard! Kill! Kill!" The soldiers roared like thunder, and all kinds of lights danced in the air as they attacked together. Lin Sun's eyes were cold, and he didn't dodge. This was what he wanted, to kill in public, and take revenge with blood. Boom! Countless bright sword chi whizzed out from the acupoints all over his body, turning into a dense storm of sword chi that rushed up to the sky and down to the ground. The void seemed to be torn apart by sharp blades, producing dense explosions. The sky was filled with sword light, and the world dimmed. The scene was so dazzling that people couldn't open their eyes. In just an instant, the dozen soldiers who rushed forward were all crushed by the sword chi. Their treasures shattered, their armors exploded, and their bodies turned into thick blood splattering everywhere. And this was only the first batch. As Lin Sun took a step forward, the sword chi whistled for 3,000 miles, traversing the 9 heavens, setting off a rain of blood in the field. He was calm, and his body glowed like a god walking in the world. Wherever he passed, the rain of blood and death turned into the cruelest scene of purgatory. Deafening explosions resounded without end. Countless weapons were shattered, and countless techniques were dispersed into a rain of light. Screams, roars, and screams rang out incessantly. The spectators in the dark felt a chill run down their spines, and they were horrified. The soldiers of the Castellan's mansion weren't ordinary figures. They were great emperors who ran amok in the past, and they were suppressed as slaves because they made mistakes. However, at this moment, even if they attacked together, they were like moths flying into a flame, and they were easily crushed. The heavens and the earth shook while the void collapsed in chaos. The buildings in the nearby area were like paper, and they were turned into powder by the terrifying torrent of battle. In just a moment, Lin Sun stretched out his hand and slapped. The head of the commander who led the guards was directly smashed, and his body exploded inch by inch. He died on the spot and was covered in blood. From the moment Lin Sun appeared to the moment he started killing wantonly, all of this was done in an extremely short period of time. Lin Sun was like a bolt of lightning, and no one could stop him. When the commander of the guards was slapped to death, there was a short period of silence in the field. But what followed was a clamor that soared into the sky, and the city was in an uproar. They'd never seen such a daring person, and it was shocking. Ling Xuanzi's combat strength is too terrifying. Those are hundreds of soldiers of the Castellan's mansion, which are comparable to hundreds of emperors. How could they be so weak? Hung Zhan died, and those guards are no match for him. Could it be that only Hung Tianxua can suppress him? No one would have thought that such a thing would happen. Killing the people of the Castellan's mansion on the street was unscrupulous and lawless. No one would have thought that Lin Sun would be so invincible and powerful under such a siege. He alone swept through the entire field. This made the hearts of Emperor Ju Tong and Ancestor 9 Realms, who were watching the battle secretly, palpitate, and they couldn't calm down. Boom! Suddenly, a scrawny old man with scraggly beard and hair appeared out of thin air. His bronze-colored skin was suffused with terrifying power as he punched out. The sky fell, the earth cracked, and the sun and moon shook. The power of this punch was extremely powerful. Lin Sun narrowed his eyes slightly, and he bent his finger like a sword and swept it out. The fist and sword collided, and a myriad of lights burst out. The figure of the scrawny old man shook, and he couldn't help but snort coldly. He stepped forward again and waved his fist to kill. He was swift and overbearing, and his fist was lofty and heavy like a divine mountain. It oppressed the world to rumble, and all kinds of strange phenomena and light rain fell like a waterfall. This scrawny old man was terrifying. It's him, Embark, regarded as one of the 7 sinners of Starting City. He was a peerless madman who was suppressed because he killed a 9th realm commander of the Castellan's mansion 10,000 years ago. Someone exclaimed as he recognized the scrawny old man. 7 sinners. They represented the 7 most formidable and ferocious figures that had been suppressed in Genesis City for countless years. Every single one of them possessed extraordinary strength, and they'd once stirred up trouble and committed great crimes in the city. Even if they were suppressed in the end, their existences couldn't be overlooked. At this moment, when people learned that it was Embark who attacked, it immediately caused a sensation, and many emperors were stunned. Young man, I was just like you all those years ago. I ran amok in the city and stirred up blood, but in the end, I was still trapped here, and my fate is no longer in my control. I advise you to stop struggling, because you'll only be suppressed in the end. The scrawny old man spoke as he attacked. Lin Sun answered him with 2 words full of disdain: trash. How could a peerless figure who was truly unbridled, arrogant, and disdainful choose to serve as a slave in exchange for a chance to struggle at death's door? What was he if he wasn't trash? The scrawny old man's face darkened. He was furious, and his killing became more and more fierce. Boom! His fists were fierce and fierce, as if there were stars exploding in his fists, bursting out an unparalleled breath of destruction. Angry with shame? Trash is trash. Don't believe it? I'll kill you now. Then, as Lin Sun ran his breath, the whole world was shaking, as if it had interfered with the law of the Great Way, making his power more and more powerful. At the same time, Lin Sun's palms and fingers drew a strange arc in the air, like an antelope hanging its horn without a trace. Boom! A sword chi suddenly appeared and ran through the sky, shaking all the stars in the sky. It was incomparably fierce. This was a sword strike that combined all the mysteries of the supreme sword scriptures. There was only one word: fast. It seemed to break the shackles of space, break the shackles of time, unrestrained, indestructible, and omnipotent. Puff! A sword pierced through Embark's head. The fierce sword chi pierced through his fists, smashed Embark's defense, and pierced through his eyebrows at an incredible speed, coming out from the back of his head with a string of bursting blood. Even his skull was blown up. P.S. I'll continue to update tonight. Chapter 2554. One strike. Embark, who was regarded as one of the 7 sinners, was killed, his skull shattered, and his body exploded under the cover of the unparalleled sword chi. Blood splattered everywhere, and his body perished. No one expected Lin Sun's attack to be so sharp, so strong. It was unknown how many people's hearts trembled, shocked by this bloody scene. Embark was a veteran 9th realm ancestor with an extremely fierce cultivation, but he died in one strike. After a short silence, suddenly, a cold conversation sounded. This guy is tricky. Why don't we attack him together? Sure. Whoever kills him will get the credit. Along with the voice, 6 figures appeared in the void, one after another. There were men and women, and as soon as they appeared, they attacked Lin Sun. Boom! All kinds of light flew up, turning this place into a purgatory. They surrounded Lin Sun and attacked him. The endless divine light flooded the long street. If it weren't for the ancient taboo formation in the city, Not to mention this street. Even the city would have been torn apart and turned into ashes. Red River Ancestor, Thousand-Old Man, Dragon Crane Emperor. Except for the dead M.O. Jean, the 7 sinners of the starting city have attacked together. It's strange. Why didn't the city lords show up after such a big commotion? Let's see if Ling Xuanzi can get through this. The spectators in the dark recognized the 6 terrifying figures. They all held their breath and paid close attention. Swish! Lin Sun was extremely fast. His figure moved like a flickering light, shuttling between all kinds of spiritual tools and fighting against all kinds of magical skills. Go! With a cold snort, an old man in a blood-red robe flashed in a strange way. The sky halberd in his hand chopped down fiercely. This was a peerless, vicious weapon that lived up to its name. The blood-colored halberd shaft and the snow-white halberd blade tore through the heavens, releasing terrifying whistling sounds. It was as if a group of gods and devils were roaring, following the side of the great halberd. It tore through the universe, destroying everything in its path, terrifying beyond compare. At the same time, the other 5 people roared together and attacked with all their strength. Magical skills and imperial weapons were like a group of meteorites, powerful and terrifying, all rushing towards Lin Sun. Crack! There was a cracking sound on the street. A part of the supreme restriction covering the city was broken, which made everyone's expression change. Just how terrifying was this halberd? At this moment, the 6 ferocious criminals attacked together, putting Lin Sun in a life-or-death situation. In everyone's view, as the halberd fell, Lin Sun would not be able to defend himself no matter what. However, at this moment, Lin Sun punched out with his fist, which was as deep as a cauldron. Dang! A trembling sound resounded through the 9 heavens and 10 earths. Many people's ears were in piercing pain and their souls were pounding. Blood flowed out from their mouths. The destructive power of this strike was quite apparent. What? Impossible. How did he block the attack with his hand? How can a peak 7th stage Emperor Realm expert have such heaven-defying strength? Many people were dumbfounded. They simply couldn't believe all of this. From the beginning until the end, Lin Sun had been barehanded and hadn't used any treasures. But now he'd even smashed his fist onto the blade of the halberd, causing it to buzz and bounce off. Rumble. At the same time, his entire body shone, scattering all of the attacking power. A rain of light rumbled and splashed everywhere, but he was completely unharmed. At this moment, Lin Sun was like a peerless demon. His black hair was loose. Although he was fighting alone, his power was not reduced at all. Go to hell. Suddenly, Lin Sun's figure rose to the sky, and he punched again with unparalleled power. Boom! The dazzling fist crushed a long and narrow crack in the sky. At the end of the crack, a man in azure armor suddenly burst out like a firework, and his blood dyed the sky. This was absolutely a domineering punch. No one could stop it. It was fast and fierce, with blood and chi like the sea, and it was extremely powerful. So strong. It was unknown how many people were horrified, shaken by this fist, their minds shaken. Under siege, Lin Sun still had the power to kill. The strength of Lin Sun's combat power had completely subverted everyone's cognition. Even the others who were besieging Lin Sun felt a chill in their heart, and their expressions became more and more dignified. They didn't dare to hold back at all, as if they were desperate. Clang! A purple spear suddenly pierced out from the hand of a middle-aged man in a white robe. It was as if the sky was falling and the earth was cracking. The power of this spear was too great. When the purple spear pierced out, it was like a purple sun exploding, and the light and fire were all over the sky. This was a spear that could kill gods and demons. The brilliant sky seemed to tremble and was about to collapse. The whole ancient city was shaking violently, as if it was about to disintegrate. Kill! Others roared and followed the middle-aged man in a white robe to attack. At this moment, a strange light flashed in Lin Sun's eyes, as if he had sensed something. Then, he no longer hesitated. Buzz! The abyssal sword cauldron, which had been transformed in the peerless catastrophe, and now became brand new, appeared at this moment. Boom! The sky was falling and the earth was cracking. The abyssal sword cauldron was flowing with hundreds of millions of lights, and a world like the universe emerged on the body of the cauldron. The sky, the earth, the latitude, the sun, the moon, the stars, the flowers, birds, insects, fish, all kinds of wonderful scenes emerged, brilliant and boundless. Amidst the explosion, the purple battle spear that was slashing down was directly shattered and exploded with a loud bang. The abyssal sword cauldron shook slightly and then turned upside down. The mouth of the cauldron rushed down, and a Taoist sword swept out at an incredible speed. Puff! The middle-aged man in a white robe was cut in an instant, and his figure turned into ashes. Another person was killed, and this was just the beginning. As the abyssal sword cauldron rose and fell, the light fell, thousands of spirits appeared, and the river of stars flowed, protecting Lin Sun below. He rose into the air and launched a real, peerless attack at this moment. Boom! The abyssal sword cauldron rumbled and crashed forward, causing the void to collapse. Two people didn't dodge in time. Not only were their treasures crushed by the abyssal sword cauldron, but their bodies were also smashed into a bloody mess. Hundreds of millions of lights fell down, crushing their muscles and bones and splashing their flesh and blood. No! How could it be? They screamed in horror and turned into two clouds of blood mist. The hidden spectators were all horrified. The might of this cauldron was too great. Merely the strands of light that descended from it were able to crush two ninth realm ancestors that were boundlessly ferocious. That level of might was simply unimaginable and unimaginably terrifying. Is this an emperor's extreme weapon? It's extremely difficult for the ancestors to refine and possess such a supreme treasure. It's almost like a legend. It must be an emperor's extreme weapon. Only such a legendary supreme emperor's extreme weapon can have such extraordinary power that it can crush a world and shake the sun, moon, and stars. The abyssal sword cauldron was too dazzling. There were the sun, moon, stars, birds, beasts, mountains, rivers, and all kinds of spirits on it. It was full of chaotic chi. It made people feel extremely depressed and palpitate from a distance. Let's go. There were only 2 of the 7 sinners left. Seeing such a scene, they were all frightened and wanted to escape at the first time. But how could Lin Sun let them do as they wished? He didn't move, but the abyssal sword cauldron flew across the sky. The abyssal sword cauldron buzzed and released a brilliant light, rushing to one of them. Inside the abyssal sword cauldron, a simple and unadorned Taoist sword cauldron flashed in the void and cut another person. Boom! Puff! 2 completely different sounds rang out one after another. One person was killed by the abyssal sword cauldron, and his body was incinerated by the rolling Taoist light. The other person was beheaded by the Taoist sword cauldron and died. Everything happened so fast that no one could even react. Even the powerhouses who were watching the battle in the dark couldn't help but be dumbfounded and break out in a cold sweat. This was too terrifying. At this time, the 7 sinners had all been wiped out. In the messy scene, only Lin Sun stood alone. His figure was tall and straight, and he was as calm and composed as when he first walked out of the teleportation formation. When people woke up from the shock, they realized that Lin Sun had already left. There was no one left in the bloody and chaotic scene. He must have gone to the Castellan's mansion. The same thought popped up in many people's minds. In an instant, countless people in the dark rushed in the direction of the Castellan's mansion. It was too terrifying. Ling Xuanzi single-handedly killed everyone, killed the guards of the Castellan's mansion, killed the 7 great sinners, and stirred up a storm of blood along the way. And now, he was clearly killing his way to the Castellan's mansion. Many people's mouths were dry. How many years had it been since such a bloody and chaotic event happened? Who would have thought that they would see it today? The Castellan's mansion. It represented the dignity of the eternal world's immortal emperor clan. Since ancient times, who dared to provoke them? But today, a ruthless person like Ling Xuanzi appeared. Why do I feel that there's something strange about the battle just now? Before he used the furnace, Ling Xuanzi seemed to have been holding back and deliberately stalling for time. Yu Duqiu frowned. He and Xiang Xiaoyuan had watched the entire battle in the dark, and he couldn't calm down. But now that he thought about it calmly, he found something strange. That's right. If he used the treasure immediately with the combat strength he displayed, he wouldn't have taken so long. Xiang Xiaoyuan was also a little puzzled. Deliberately stalling for time? What was he trying to do? Let's go to the Castellan's mansion to take a look, Yu Duqiu said and turned to leave. Xiang Xiaoyuan also followed him. If one looked down from the sky, they would find that countless emperor auras were gathering in the direction of the Castellan's mansion in Beginning City at this moment. Obviously, the earth-shattering battle just now made them completely unable to calm down, and their minds were completely attracted. At this moment, in the Castellan's mansion, Hung Tianxuo was already in a state of extreme shock and anger. The forces sent to capture Ling Xuanzi were all dead. The 7 old things also died one after another. There was no need for others to report this series of deaths. Hung Tianxuo already knew about it from the jade tokens that were continuously shattering. Does this kid really want to overturn the heavens? Hung Tianxuo's expression was grim, and his eyes were terrifyingly cold. Uncle, what should we do? When Xiaoheng's emotions were completely out of control. His expression was as if he had lost his parents, and it was extremely ugly. He even felt an indescribable chill, and for the first time, he felt an indescribable panic and fear. What should we do? Of course we'll kill this kid. Hung Tianxuo's face was livid. He stood up, and his aura was like a volcano that was about to erupt, causing the hall to shake violently. P.S. Send more updates to me. Chapter 2555. Genesis City fell into an upheaval. The natives living in the city all hid, shivering in fear, on the deserted streets. Only the Emperor Realm figures that possessed profound cultivations were flashing towards the Castellan's estate. Undercurrents surged, and the winds and clouds surged. It had been countless years since a bloody conflict like the one today had occurred, and it was obvious how great the uproar it caused was. Castellan's estate. This was a huge, ancient building complex that had stood here since a long time ago. The magnificent gate and the light golden tiles were like a city lying in front of them. This was the core area of Genesis City, and it was covered in unimaginable restrictions. Since ancient times, no matter how heaven-defying their combat strength was, all those that committed murder in the city were unable to shake the Castellan's estate. At this moment, Lin Sun's figure appeared here. Perhaps it was because he'd arrived too quickly that it caused all the soldiers stationed outside the Castellan's estate to be stunned, and then their expressions changed while they were slightly dazed. This fellow is actually still alive. He intends to kill his way into the Castellan's estate? Even though these soldiers were shocked, they still stood out at the first possible moment, and they waved their weapons and pointed them at Lin Sun while surging with killing intent. However, Lin Sun didn't even spare them a glance and spoke directly. Hung Tianxuo, Wen Xiaoheng, if the two of you still don't come out, then this Castellan's estate will be destroyed because of the two of you. Every single word was like a thunderclap that resounded through the heavens and the earth, and it shook the sky to the point it droned and trembled. The soldiers that guarded the Castellan's estate felt their eardrums stinging, and they saw stars. It was just a voice, yet it shook them to the point they almost coughed up blood. The experts who had gathered from all directions felt their hearts tremble when they heard the voice. This Ling Xuanzi, he'd actually declared war against the Castellan. Young man, needless to say, your combat strength can be considered to be an overlord amongst your peers. But do you really think you can survive in the city with just your cultivation? An indifferent and calm voice resounded from within the Castellan's estate. This was Hung Tianxuo's voice, and it revealed great dignity. However, Hung Tianxuo didn't reveal himself, and he seemed to be disdainful. Lin Sun's gaze was deep as he said indifferently, "The Castellan of a city is holed up here and doesn't dare come out to see me. Looks like I can only kill my way in myself and drag you out." Whoosh! He stood where he was and clenched his fist. A stream of sword chi condensed and slashed forward. The sword energy was like an ocean, a boundless expanse. There were stars descending within it, heavens rising and falling, and the scene was unimaginable. During this process, mist spread out, lightning flashed, and thunder rumbled. This magnificent scene seemed like the creation of the world, and it caused one's heart to palpitate. Not good. The soldiers guarding the city lord manor quickly retreated, feeling great fear in their hearts. They could sense the might of this sword, and it was impossible to face it head-on. Everyone rushed to the sides, running for their lives. With a rumbling sound, the thick sword light rushed into the clouds. It was incomparably resplendent, as if a river of stars was descending. One could clearly see the sun, moon, and stars falling. The sword chi reached the heavens, splitting the majestic and ancient building of the city lord manor into two. A huge destructive crack appeared, continuously spreading in all directions. Merely the might and profundities contained within this sword strike actually caused countless spectators to be shocked and tremble without end. However, the surroundings of a row upon row of buildings in the city lord manor suddenly had countless dense restriction fluctuations, and a brilliant light shone as symbols circulated. As if they were alive, the destruction caused by Lin Sun's sword strike was restored to its original state in the blink of an eye. It was completely undamaged. Right at this moment, Hung Tianshua's dignified voice that was filled with mockery sounded out. Ling Xuanzi, aren't you very powerful and want to kill your way into the city lord manor? Why can't this sword strike even shatter a single piece of debris? In the distance, the spectators looked at each other. Since ancient times until now, the city lord manor has been controlled and presided over by different immortal emperor clans. After countless years of operation, countless terrifying restrictions have been set up inside and outside the city lord manor. How can it be destroyed so easily? Someone muttered with emotion. I'm afraid Ling Xuanzi will have to stop here. Humph. The city lord still hasn't appeared even after being killed. Even if Ling Xuanzi stops here, the city lord manor will still be the one to lose face. Someone harumphed coldly. However, at this moment, Lin Sun suddenly let out a sneer. Hung Tianxia, do you really think the city lord manor is indestructible? As soon as he finished speaking, he waved his sleeve. Boom! Countless rays of light turned into strange and mysterious Dao runes and rushed into the city lord manor like tens of thousands of divine rainbows. Then, suddenly, there was a series of explosions and collapses in the city lord manor. The countless restrictions that covered the city lord manor seemed to have suffered serious damage and were falling apart at this moment. With a wave of his sleeve, it was like breaking dry weeds and smashing rotten wood. Many people were dumbfounded and couldn't believe it. As far as I know, the restrictions covering the city lord manor can even kill a real Dao ancestor. How could it be broken so easily? Xiang Xiaoyuan revealed a shocked expression and felt extremely surprised. It's indeed unimaginable. Yu Duchio's eyes flickered. He couldn't understand Lin Sun anymore. He felt that this person was full of secrets and was always unexpected and unpredictable. Boom! The world where the city lord manor was located was filled with a rain of light and divine light. The restrictions that covered it were like an avalanche, constantly collapsing and dissipating. The incredible scene not only shocked the spectators, but also the powerhouses in the city lord manor. At this moment, even the powerhouses in the city lord manor couldn't calm down and their expressions changed. How is this possible? How is this possible? When Xiaoheng's voice, full of horror, also came out. Obviously, he didn't expect that the city lord manor that was impregnable would appear so fragile at this moment. At this moment, Lin Sun once again slashed out with his sword. Boom! The vast sword chi soared to 3,000 meters across the sky, like the light that could destroy the world, and slashed down at the city lord manor. At this moment, countless exclamations and screams sounded. Humph! Suddenly, a cold grunt resounded, and then the boundless strand of sword chi was actually shattered inch by inch before vanishing without a trace. Soon after, a majestic figure shot up from the city lord's mansion. He was like a demon from hell, emitting a monstrous aura. Ling Xuanzi, would I, Heng Tianshou, have any face left if I don't kill you today? His voice rumbled to the point this expanse of the heavens and the earth trembled, and it seemed as if it was on the verge of collapse. Heng Tianshou wore a white robe, his hair fluttered, and his figure was mighty. He was like a demon that had descended from the heavens. His entire body was coiled with strands of golden laws that seemed like divine chains, and it enveloped his entire body, causing him to seem mysterious and filled with an oppressive aura. In his hand was an ancient spear that was scarlet red like blood, and it emanated monstrous killing intent. It seemed as if it had drunk the blood of a myriad of living beings, and its piercingly cold aura caused even imperial emperors to be terrified. The hearts of the spectating cultivators in the vicinity trembled as they sensed this might and coldness, causing their entire bodies to feel cold and practically tremble. This was the true might of an ancestor of a Tao. But exactly how formidable was Heng Tianshou? Probably no one knew the answer. The combat strength of a terrifying existence at such a level was difficult to estimate, because in so many years, no one had ever been able to force him to make a move. He was like an invincible god, and his reputation pressed down heavily on the hearts of everyone. Earlier, when Heng Tianshou didn't appear, everyone felt that he was hiding like a tortoise, and he didn't have the might of an ancestor of a Tao at all. But now, when he appeared and stood there casually, this expanse of the heavens and the earth trembled, and the entire city of beginnings glowed. The defensive formation of the city was activated, and it automatically defended. That level of might was too terrifying. Which one of the experts that dared to come and watch the battle wasn't a ruthless imperial emperor? But at this moment, all of them couldn't help but retreat, because the peerless killing intent grew stronger and stronger, and as it swept past, it caused many people's hairs to stand on end. They simply didn't dare believe all of this. They were so far away, yet they were actually unable to bear the killing intent of an ancestor of a Tao. Everyone asked themselves in their hearts, if they were in Heng Tianshou's position, how would they fight? They would probably be shattered by Heng Tianshou's aura before they could even make a move, and they wouldn't even be able to approach. It was also at this moment that everyone deeply realized how terrifying Heng Tianshou was. An expert that was able to guard the first gate of the Eternal in the vast thousand battles domain really wasn't someone that ordinary extraordinary overlords could compare to. Bang! But soon, a surging power rushed up like a pillar that supported the sky, piercing through the darkness, covering the sky and the earth, surging violently, and shaking the void in all directions to collapse. Lin Sun, who was originally standing in front of the City Lord's mansion, also rose into the air at this moment. His black hair was loose, and his eyes were deep. Thousands of strands of Taoist light sprinkled down like a silver waterfall, making him look like a god that descended from outer space. He was completely different from before. At this moment, Lin Sun's whole body was filled with a kind of peerless fighting intent, and there was a kind of power that could swallow mountains and rivers. His eyes were deep as he stared straight at Heng Tianshou, and his heart was surging with unparalleled killing intent. Strictly speaking, this was the first time he had confronted a real ancestor of a Tao since he started cultivating. He wasn't nervous, let alone afraid. What he had was a kind of boiling and resolute fighting intent. If the ancestor of a Tao was said to be an insurmountable moat, then today, Lin Sun would shake and break this inherent shackle. On the opposite side, Heng Tianshou looked Lin Sun up and down and said softly, "Come here and receive your death." It was only two icy cold words, yet it was horrifying. It was like the will of the ruler of the heavens, and it was pronouncing a person's fate. Lin Sun laughed with ridicule. "Who do you think you are? You're just the ancestor of a Tao. What's the big deal? Just the ancestor of a Tao. Who could say such words? After all, such an existence was the highest peak above the Emperor realm, and it was sufficient to easily suppress everyone in the Emperor realm." In the shadows, numerous cultivators were shocked and gasped. They felt Lin Sun's confidence and restrained edge, and a type of courage and domineering aura that far surpassed the masses. Which one of the cultivators present wasn't a great emperor? Moreover, there was no lack of supreme existences that were giants in their respective starry worlds. Yet now, they seemed to be unable to maintain their composure in this confrontation, and it was even to the extent that they had to be extra careful while watching from the shadows. Ha ha ha! Ling Xuanzi, it's truly difficult for me to imagine that you're a figure that came from a ruined place like the starry ancient path. You really talk big. Heng Tianshuo roared with laughter. His eyes were like two strands of demonic light that penetrated through the layers of space to lock onto Lin Sun, and it oppressed the souls of Lin Sun. Chapter 2556. His laughter shook the heavens. At this moment, a formidable aura stretched out from Heng Tianshuo's body, and it was like an ocean had burst through a dam or a river of stars had exploded, and it swept towards the surroundings. Wisps of Taoist light flowed through Lin Sun's body, blocking the horrible deterrents. He stood still and was not affected at all. However, some of the nearby cultivators weren't able to stop it. All of them had pale faces as they staggered back in terror, and they seemed as if they'd seen a ghost. The peerless killing intent released by Heng Tianshuo surged, causing cracks to appear in the heavens and the earth. This was undoubtedly a type of intimidation. The aura that was emitted was enough to make one tremble in fear. If they were to truly fight, just how powerful would they be? You're only SOSO. If we were at the same level of cultivation, killing you would be as easy as killing a chicken or a monkey. Fortunately, you've already proven your Tao and become an ancestor. Otherwise, you wouldn't be qualified to fight me at all. Lin Sun's expression was neither sad nor happy. What a pity. I'm afraid that you will never be able to reach the ancestor realm in this lifetime and be on the same level as me. Heng Tianshuo took a step forward, causing the heavens and the earth to change and the clouds to lose color. He was like a monarch patrolling the world and looking down upon the world, and he carried an invincible, imposing aura. Numerous, enormous stars floated up into appearance by his side. He seemed like a god that was striding forward while his entire body was covered in golden divine chains and laws, and only his gaze was piercingly cold and oppressive. Great Tao patterns cover the sky. A simple step was already so terrifying. Kill! Lin Sun shouted. His entire body was suffused with the glow of the Tao, and he was enshrouded by divine radiance while his vital blood swept out and covered the heavens and the earth. The abyssal sword cauldron floated up into appearance above him, and it rumbled while a myriad of specks of light rained down from above, causing it to faintly carry the might of suppressing the past, present, and future. This was a head-on battle against the Tao Father. Dang! 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 Explosions shook the heavens. Heng Tianshuo's figure flowed with the golden energy of the laws, and he was like an overlord. In his surroundings, the universe collapsed and the stars exploded into pieces. It transformed into an expanse of ruins, and even the chaotic mist was blasted out. However, in the face of such a peerless attack by Lin Sun, he was unscathed, seemingly invincible and unshakable. Boom! This part of the starry sky exploded, collapsing. Everyone was horrified. They marveled at Lin Sun's fierce and overbearing means of attack, and were even more shocked by the unshakable supreme power of Heng Tianshuo. Lin Sun narrowed his eyes slightly. The ancestor of the Tao was indeed a terrible enemy. The energy and laws he possessed had long since exceeded the scope of the ninth realm ancestor realm, and they'd attained the limits of the emperor realm and stood at the highest peak. Even though Lin Sun was extremely powerful, he was still only a 7th level emperor realm cultivator. The difference between them wasn't just one level. In the eyes of other onlookers, Heng Tianshuo's realm was far higher than Lin Sun's. There was almost no suspense in this battle. However, Lin Sun was not afraid at all, and he looked calm. Do you see that? This is the gap between you and me. Heng Tianshuo laughed. His laughter was filled with absolute disdain and arrogance. Don't worry, I will kill you today. Lin Sun's black hair was flying. His eyes were sharp, his fighting spirit was high, and his courage was matchless. His attack momentum was getting stronger and stronger. Is that so? Unfortunately, you won't have the chance. Heng Tianshuo's light was frightening. He had a kind of conceit that he was the most powerful emperor in the world. Holding the blood-colored spear in one hand, he pointed at Lin Sun and rushed straight at him. The murderous aura was overwhelming. Boom! The heavens and earth shook, and the sun and moon lost their light. This was a peerless battle. The blood-colored spear and the abyssal sword cauldron clashed, piercing through the sky and causing a myriad of divine radiance to erupt. All sorts of unbelievable phenomena appeared. Divine light shone brightly between the two of them, and their murderous aura swept through the surroundings. Chaotic chi filled the air, and their fighting spirit pierced through the universe. This was a great disaster. Everyone felt a chill from head to toe, and their hair stood on end. This was definitely a battle that was rare to see. It occurred between a Tao ancestor and a peak 7th-level emperor. There was a huge disparity in their cultivation, but they were still confronting each other. It was an unprecedented battle. Rumble. Suddenly, the two of them crossed each other and charged to one side. However, a figure shook violently, and a string of blood splashed out. It was extremely dazzling. A bloody mark was torn in front of Lin Sun, and his flesh was torn open. It was a ghastly sight. Ling Xuanzi is going to be suppressed. Many people were shocked. Heng Tianxua is the ancestor of the Tao after all. He's like a supreme chasm in the emperor realm. Since ancient times, very few people have been able to surpass him. Some people sighed. In fact, it's already unbelievable that Ling Xuanzi was able to fight Heng Tianxua head-on to such an extent. Even if he loses, his wisdom will live on forever. Unfortunately, he's going to fall here in the end. Everyone's hearts rose and fell, and they were unable to calm down. Lin Sun's injury was terrifying, and it was actually difficult to heal in a short period of time. There was a sharp golden force spreading out, and it destroyed the blood essence in his body. Is this the strength of the ancestor of the Tao? Lin Sun's voice was low as if he was talking to himself, and his eyes were deep and calm. Bang! Heng Tianxua laughed loudly as he charged over once more. A blood-red spear soared through the sky, and it possessed the might to shatter the sun, moon, and stars. It was extremely terrifying. It wasn't long before Lin Sun was injured once more. A bloody mark was torn on his back, and it was so deep that bones could be seen while beads of blood spilled out. Heng Tianxua's aura was peerlessly terrifying. Strands of golden laws descended from his entire body and drowned him. He was like a god that had set out to battle, and he emanated a brilliant glow. His might simply caused others to feel despair. Lin Sun didn't say anything. His entire body was boiling like a furnace, and his cultivation seemed to be burning. He seemed as if he didn't realize at all that he was injured. Rumble. The heavens and the earth were overturned. Heng Tianxua held the spear in his hand while carrying monstrous divine might, and he was like a star that collided with Lin Sun. It carried a destructive fluctuation, and everywhere it passed, space shattered while chaotic mist appeared. During this entire process, Lin Sun was injured ceaselessly, and he fell into a state of being suppressed. Even his body cracked apart while blood sprayed out. This scene caused others to shudder with fear and feel their scalps go numb. Suppress. In the battlefield, Heng Tianxua's expression was cold as he charged forward with the blood-red spear in hand, and the fingers on his left hand spread open to transform into a peerless cage that suppressed Lin Sun. Various lights fluttered in the sky, and it was indistinctly like a god was chanting scriptures while sitting cross-legged in the depths of the universe and suppressing the mortal world. Such strength was simply unimaginable to the extreme. Lin Sun's eyes became even deeper, yet he remained calm. His cultivation was fully displayed at this moment, and all the phenomena of the heavens and the earth surged with boundless brilliance. It faintly seemed as if a great abyss lay across the sky and swallowed the surroundings. Even though he was injured ceaselessly and suppressed ceaselessly in the battle, he still hadn't been completely suppressed up until now, and his sharpness didn't diminish at all. Gradually, along with the passage of time, people noticed this abnormality, and they couldn't help but be stunned. Under the attack of one Tao ancestor, Ling Xuanzi was actually unable to be suppressed and killed for a long time. Some people couldn't help but think that with Lin Sun's current cultivation, if he was lucky enough to survive this battle, who in this world could be his opponent when he became an ancestor in the future? Too strong, Yu Duqiu murmured, and his eyes drifted. Originally, he was also a peerless great emperor, and he was extremely conceited. He thought that he wasn't inferior to Lin Sun, and he even had great confidence that he could compete with Lin Sun. But at this moment, he was slightly shaken. Xiang Xiyuan frowned and said, "As the lord of a city, Heng Tianshua's cultivation realm far surpasses Ling Xuanzi. Now that he hasn't defeated Ling Xuanzi after such a long battle, it will definitely cause him to lose face. I suspect that he will immediately attack ruthlessly." Sure enough, as soon as she finished speaking, "Kill!" At this moment, Heng Tianshua let out a low roar, and his entire body emanated a bloody aura that was like an ocean. Golden nomological energy shot into the heavens and the earth, and his ancestor realm energy seemed to be completely released at this moment, and it was boundlessly terrifying. Obviously, he felt slightly embarrassed that he was unable to kill Lin Sun for so long. After all, he was the ancestor of one Tao. Yet, he was unable to kill a peak 7th level great emperor after such a long time. If news of this were to spread, he would become a joke. At this moment, Lin Sun let out a clear howl, and his aura actually rose steadily at this moment, becoming powerful to the extreme. His body was like a great furnace that smelted the heavens. Rumble, the two of them fought fiercely, and they charged into the sky and attacked wantonly. The strength of their attacks was so strong that it shook the stars, caused the heavens to tremble, and the sun, moon, and stars to be on the verge of collapse. All the experts were shocked, and all of them were dumbfounded. They felt a chill rise up their spines, and they retreated incessantly. The might released by such a battle was too terrifying, and even if they were watching the battle from afar, they still felt threatened. Even more inconceivable to them was that Heng Tianshua had already utilized his entire might and brought forth the might of a Tao ancestor to the limit, yet he was merely able to suppress Lin Sun and was unable to kill Lin Sun. This was completely unexpected, and it was even to the extent that they were unable to imagine exactly how Lin Sun had accomplished this. Die! Heng Tianshua's eyes glowed with a ferocious glow while his aura surged and overturned space, and he was formidable to the point he was like an enraged god that intended to destroy the world. At this moment, Lin Sun had completely let go of his strength, and he fought with all his might. It wasn't long before, along with the rumbling of the abyssal sword cauldron, the Tao sword whistled out. Unlike before, the might of this sword strike actually instantly rose explosively by 2 times. Pooh! Even though Heng Tianshua had blocked this sword strike, he was struck by the sword chi, and it slashed open a mark on his shoulder, while even his bones cracked. Everyone was stunned, and all of them were astounded. Since the battle began, this was the first time Heng Tianshua had been injured, and it caused everyone to not dare believe that an ancestor of one Tao like him would actually be shaken. "You were actually able to injure me?" Heng Tianshua seemed to be filled with disbelief, and then his expression instantly turned gloomy while his gaze was cold and ghastly as he charged out explosively. Bang! He was like an infuriated, ferocious beast as he swept his spear horizontally and deduced an ancestor realm technique, causing boundless golden laws to transform into a storm that surged through the heavens and the earth, and it rumbled as it was released. "You don't have a chance." Lin Sun's gaze was deep and surged with a shocking glow. At this moment, his body that was covered in injuries was recovering at an unbelievable speed, and his cultivation was like a volcano that had been suppressed for a long time had been completely released. Its might was actually not inferior to Heng Tianshua at all. Clang! The abyssal sword cauldron rumbled as it glowed and emanated a myriad of strands of divine radiance that accompanied Lin Sun's attack, and he seemed to possess an overbearing aura of supremacy. The feeling he gave others was as if he'd become a completely different person. No one knew that because it was the first time he'd fought an ancestor of one Dao. Lin Sun had always been extremely vigilant and cautious during the previous battles. He'd been probing and experiencing the strength of a Dao ancestor, and he'd never completely revealed his true trump card. Now, he'd roughly figured out Hung Tianshuo's strength, and he'd resolved to launch a counterattack and eliminate this old bastard. P.S. I'll continue tonight. Chapter 2557. Rumble. Lin Sun seemed as if he'd become a person. At this moment, when he attacked, he was like a god that was pushing the sun, moon, and stars. He emanated boundless radiance and transformed into the phenomenon of a great abyss that blotted out the sky and surged with all the phenomena of the world. In a trance, the abyss transformed into a cauldron that emitted an ancient and vast, dignified aura, and it seemed as if it could destroy everything. This was the embodiment of Lin Sun's cultivation. At this moment, it was released, and it transformed into a part of the might of the abyssal sword cauldron that pressed down towards Heng Tianshuo. Such a scene, such might, and such domineering aura shocked everyone present. In their eyes, Lin Sun's current might was completely different from before, and it was formidable to the point that they felt horrified and extremely oppressed just by looking at it from afar. Heng Tianshuo's expression changed. As the ancestor of a Dao, it was fine if he was in a confrontation with someone at the same realm as him. But now, he actually felt threatened by a peak 7th level emperor. This was something he'd never experienced since he started cultivating, and it was difficult for him to accept. His expression grew even more ghastly, and his killing intent was abundant as he was utterly furious. Bang! The blood-red spear swept out horizontally while emanating strands of profound and unfathomable ancestor realm aura, and it shot up in defiance of the heavens and bombarded the abyssal sword cauldron that assaulted him. At this moment, the heavens and the earth seemed as if they'd just been split apart. Chaotic mist suffused the air, while divine radiance and turbulence filled the surroundings. Lin Sun, who'd launched a counterattack, struck out with an earth-shattering strike at the first possible moment, and it caused Heng Tianshuo's body to tremble violently before he was blasted flying. Crack! The sky collapsed as Heng Tianshuo was blasted flying for an unknown distance, and he seemed to be in an extremely sorry state. However, he wasn't injured, and he was still extremely formidable. His hair fluttered in the wind while the divine light in his eyes was deep and vast like an ocean. When he stared at a person, it could swallow that person's mind, and it was extremely oppressive. But even if he was completely unharmed, he was shaken in the end, and this brought an extremely great impact to everyone, causing them to tremble and feel agitated. Kill! Heng Tianshuo himself felt humiliated, and the killing intent in his eyes grew even stronger. His attacks became fiercer and fiercer, trying to find a chance to kill Lin Sun cleanly to wipe away the previous shame. Under the sky, Lin Sun's black hair was loose, and his eyes were deep. He stood there like a king of gods. The glow of abyssal sword cauldron bathed him in it, forming an ocean of brilliance that made the world tremble. In the face of the increasingly fierce killing of Heng Tianshuo, Lin Sun did not flinch and rush forward. The clouds moved in all directions as sword chi swept out like an ocean. Strands of killing light burst forth, energy surged, and laws interweaved in a complicated manner. Many of the restrictions in Starting City were activated. They flickered with brilliance, and from time to time, a mysterious power would emerge to protect the various parts of the city. Otherwise, it would have long been destroyed. The two of them turned into two beams of light, and in the blink of an eye, they had already exchanged several hundred blows. They fought until the heavens collapsed and the earth split. The stars moved, and all sorts of mysterious phenomena appeared. Unlike a moment ago, Lin Sun seemed to be evenly matched with Hung Tianshuo at this moment, and he wasn't suppressed or injured anymore. This caused many people to exclaim in shock. Even those who were also great Emperor Ju Ying were stunned by this. No one could have imagined that Lin Sun was actually so powerful that he could be evenly matched with the ancestor of one Tao. This completely subverted everyone's understanding. Not long after, the abyssal Tao soared into the sky and pierced through the sky. In the deafening sound of collision, Hung Tianxuo was defeated, and he was shaken to the point of staggering back while his face turned pale. The scene was completely boiling, and everyone was moved. Lin Sun seemed to be reversing the world, and he launched a peerlessly sharp counterattack. "You, Ling Xuanzi, can die without regrets since you're able to force me to use my full strength." At this moment, Hung Tianxua's face was extremely gloomy, and he spoke word by word. Obviously, he was completely infuriated and decided to use his trump card. Boom! The aura all over his body surged, and the blood-red spear in his hand struck the sky. Instantly, numerous enormous golden stars appeared before and behind him. He was like a god that had descended to the world, and he emitted a majestic pressure. This was a type of vast power. It was just a single strike, but it was like a golden starfield smashing down. The ancient stars revolved, and the golden river of stars flowed, and it was terrifying. The power completely shocked the minds of countless great emperors, and their hands and feet went cold. Clang, 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 clang. Lin Sun used the abyssal sword cauldron, and it collided repeatedly with the blood-red spear. It was dazzling, and the killing intent was like a tempestuous wave. The stars trembled violently, and it was like a vast starfield was rising and falling. The ancient stars emitted boundless power. The starlight was hazy, and it completely concealed Lin Sun's figure. From the outside, it was like a small world, but from the inside, it was boundlessly vast. One Tao Ancestor's Realm. This was a type of realm that only the ancestor of one Tao could control. It wasn't an illusion, but it was no different from reality, and it was completely condensed from a complete great Tao of the ancestor realm. In this realm, Hung Tianxua was hundreds of millions of meters tall, and he stood in the universe of stars with matchless divine power. He evolved the vast sky and made himself the only ruler, and he could destroy everything. When the blood-red spear fell, the river of stars collapsed, and there was nothing it could not destroy. In his one Tao ancestral realm, everything was like ants and dust, and the people watching the battle almost suffocated. In my glittering gold ancestral realm, no one can go against my will. Hung Tianxua roared. Boom! The sky cracked, and the golden stars trembled. They fell down and killed Lin Sun. But at this moment, Lin Sun's figure became blurred, and he suddenly turned into the scene of a big abyss. It was vast, boundless, and unfathomable. The abyssal sword cauldron seemed to have awakened from silence, and it floated in Lin Sun's big abyss, and its Taoist patterns interweaved with hundreds of millions of rays of light. An indescribable, devouring aura spread at this moment. Silently, the falling golden river of stars disappeared in the big abyss, like a stone thrown into the sea. It only caused a slight ripple, and then it was swallowed and disappeared. At this moment, Lin Sun had completely deduced his cultivation to an unprecedented level, and combined it with the abyssal sword cauldron. He released it in this one Tao ancestral realm that belonged to Hung Tianxua. Like a big abyss, it swallowed the eternal stars, and it possessed a kind of power beyond the limit. Hung Tianxua's pupils shrank, and he almost didn't dare to believe it. He waved the blood-red spear, and golden stars poured down continuously, as if they wanted to destroy the world, and they all rushed towards Lin Sun. However, no matter how terrifying his attack was, the rolling golden stars were all swallowed, crushed, and obliterated by the big abyss. In the end, with a rumbling explosion, the ancestral realm domain world was forcibly swallowed by the big abyss. Hung Tianxua's face was pale, and he almost coughed up blood. His eyes were filled with disbelief. A peak 7th-level emperor could shake the ancestral realm that he had condensed with his cultivation. Gold flash flowing fire, myriad stars annihilate the world. He roared, and his entire body was covered in ancient Tao markings and laws. They flickered and flickered, and they interweaved into a burning golden river of stars that covered the sky, and they pounced towards Lin Sun. "Open!" Lin Sun shouted, and the boundless big abyss covered the sky and operated completely. It was like a black hole that stretched across the starry sky, and it swallowed the stars in all directions. Such power was simply boundlessly terrifying. The entire starry sky was collapsing, and the spectators were on the verge of losing their minds. Who dared to imagine that a peak 7th-level emperor was actually strong enough to suppress a Tao ancestral realm? Bang! A muffled bang caused the heavens and the earth to tremble, and the ancestral realm that Hung Tianxia had condensed was completely destroyed at this moment. He was shaken to the point of retreating explosively, and he couldn't help but cough up a mouthful of blood. The big abyss moved horizontally, and the abyssal sword cauldron released expanse after expanse of radiance that pressed towards Hung Tianxia, causing him to suffer a terrifying pressure before he could even stand firm, and he fell into a passive position. Even Hung Tianxia is injured. Everyone's gazes flickered. At the beginning, Hung Tianxia had suppressed Lin Sun with all his strength, and then Lin Sun had counterattacked and fought until they were evenly matched. Now, he was the one who was at a disadvantage. This caused everyone to feel stupefied. In fact, it was also at this moment that Hung Tianxia suffered a terrifying suppression. Lin Sun released his power to the extreme, and the big abyss moved horizontally while the abyssal sword cauldron attacked. Wave after wave of pressure descended, and it was boundless like an ocean, and it didn't stop. Even though Hung Tianxia was enraged to the extreme, and he exhausted all means to counterattack, he was still beaten to the point of retreating repeatedly, and he was constantly injured, and he coughed up blood repeatedly. At this moment, he encountered a true crisis. With his realm, he could originally be unafraid of Lin Sun, but at this moment, he felt a heavy threat. Hung Tianxia attacked with all his might, and it was as if he was putting his life on the line. His entire body emitted violent ancestral realm laws that swept through the sky, crushed the void, and finally shattered Lin Sun's suppression. However, just a moment later, along with Lin Sun's powerful attack, Hung Tianxia staggered, and his chest was almost split open by the abyssal Tao sword, causing blood to spray out like a waterfall. At this moment, Hung Tianxia was already covered in blood, and his body had been shaken until it was tattered. He was in an extremely wretched state. Everyone felt like they were going crazy. That was the ancestor of one Tao. So how could he be suppressed by a peak great emperor? Even Xiang Xiaoyuan, Yu Duqiu, and the other peak great emperors were stunned, and a storm raged in their hearts. The power that Lin Sun had displayed in this battle was continuously challenging their understanding, causing them to experience a shock that they had never experienced before. The ancestor of one Tao was as powerful as a natural chasm. Since ancient times, there were very few people who could shake or surpass him. At the very least, in the boundless universe, this was an iron law. But now, this iron law clearly had the possibility of being broken. I've also heard that in the eternal true world, there are some extremely terrifying freaks in some of the great forces that control the peak of the heavenly realm who can do this, but I've never seen it with my own eyes, so I've always treated it as a rumor. But now, Duccio murmured, this seems to be real. This is the reason why we crossed the boundless 1,000 battle realms and headed to the eternal true world. Otherwise, how could we have witnessed such an earth-shattering event in a place like the boundless 1,000 battle realms? Xiang Xian said unhurriedly, and his eyes shone with extraordinary splendor. In the battlefield, Hung Tianxia was in a terrible situation. Lin Sun had completely suppressed him, and Lin Sun continued to attack him, causing his skin and flesh to be torn apart. His bones were exposed, and blood was splattering everywhere. He had suffered extremely serious injuries. No one in this world can surpass the ancestor realm, no matter how heaven-defying you are. Madness flashed in his eyes, and a ruthless aura spread out from his body. It was as if he was in a fight with his life on the line, or as if he was going to use his trump card. A terrifying aura filled the air, and a black figure appeared in front of him. It was an obscure and immortal aura. The heroes in the dark were terrified, and chills ran down their spines. They felt like they were suffocating, as if they had fallen into an ice cave. Two dazzling beams of divine light shot out from Lin Sun's eyes, and they were like two bolts of lightning streaking across the sky. He noticed that this was not the power that belonged to Hung Tianxua, but the terrifying might that only an immortal could possess. The aura of this black figure was incomparably powerful, and it swept through the sky. It was like the sharpest and brightest saber scraping the surface of people's bodies, and it made people feel like they were going to collapse. This is the power of an immortal will. It transcends the ancestor realm, and it can easily destroy everything in the world. Someone exclaimed in shock. Although this black figure was only a will, it was far stronger than Hung Tianxua, because it was the aura of an immortal, and it was too distant and terrifying. Lin Sun realized at once that the black figure was far from what he could contend with at the moment. Ling Xuanzi, let's see if you could survive this. Hung Tianxua roared. His hair was disheveled, and he looked like he had gone mad. In front of him, the black figure suddenly looked at Lin Sun. What kind of eyes were those? Merciless, cold, and filled with the indifferent aura of death. It was like the arrival of a demon from the Dark Age, and it made people feel despair. The immortal aura around him caused the sky to rumble and collapse. The violent aura flowed, and it actually directly shattered the abyss around Lin Sun. With just its aura, everyone felt their blood run cold. Even Lin Sun's expression finally changed. At this moment, the black figure's killing intent swept through the world, and the universe seemed to have turned dark. He was like a demon that had crossed over and dominated everything here. The spectators in the distance felt their minds shake violently, and their divine senses were blocked. They felt a stabbing pain in their eyes, and they could no longer see the scene in the battlefield, because the immortal power was too supreme and terrifying. At this extremely dangerous moment, Lin Sun stretched out his hand and patted the abyssal sword cauldron. Within the cauldron, a suppressed nirvana order flame suddenly swept out. It was like a dazzling divine chain, and it was entwined with the destructive power of order as it lashed out. Lin Sun, on the other hand, teleported far away at the first possible moment. Only he knew how terrifying the nirvana order flame was. Boom! The world seemed to be turned upside down, and everything was overturned. The immortal aura that surged towards Lin Sun was crushed like paper by the nirvana order flame that was like a divine chain. Then, as the nirvana order flame spread, the black figure formed by the immortal instantly turned into ashes and disappeared without a trace. Hung Tianxua was stunned. This was his trump card, his greatest trump card, but now it was erased just like that. Oh no! The next moment, Hung Tianxua's expression changed greatly, and he teleported away, but it was too late. He saw the nirvana order flame flashed strangely, and a flame of order floated down and touched the bloody battle spear in his hand. This peerless and ferocious weapon that had accompanied Heng Tianxuo in battle for countless years was like a piece of wood that was easily flammable, and it rustled as it transformed into an expanse of ash that drifted down. At the same time, the nirvana order flame shrouded Hung Tianxua like a divine whip. No, Hung Tianxua's scalp went numb, and he was so shocked that his soul almost flew out of his body. He exhausted all his strength to resist. However, it was in vain. In just a moment, his ancestor Taoist body that could be said to be invincible turned into a handful of ashes. P.S. For 1,000 words plus updates. Chapter 2558. The heavens and the earth shook, and the surroundings were in chaos. Even though he'd moved far away, when he saw a mere strand of the nirvana flames of order transform the eternal will into ash, it caused the peerlessly ferocious blood-red spear to burn like a piece of paper. It caused Hung Tianxua, the ancestor of the Tao, to be unable to struggle, and his body was incinerated, Lin Sun couldn't help but feel shocked. It was too formidable. This strand of nirvana flames of order was gathered in the mysterious restricted area of the underworld, and it was formed from the energy of order that collapsed during the destruction of the last era. According to the Green Sparrow, such a terrifying strand of order was sufficient to pose a serious threat to an eternal figure. Now it would seem like it really deserved its reputation. That strand of eternal will was extremely formidable. As soon as it appeared, killing intent shot into the heavens and the earth, and its might far surpassed the ancestor realm. From the blink of an eye, it turned into ashes. Hung Tianxuo was a true Tao ancestor. But when facing the assault of the nirvana flames of order, he was still so weak, and he was instantly obliterated on the spot. However, after he killed Hung Tianxuo, the energy of the nirvana flames of order was exhausted and dispersed as well. When the dust and dirt dispersed, everything returned to silence. The heavens and the earth were covered in countless cracks, and the signs of destruction were everywhere. Even though there were numerous restrictions in the city to defend against this boundlessly terrifying battle, there were still many places that suffered destructive attacks. The spectators were stunned, and the surroundings were perfectly silent. Earlier, when that strand of eternal will appeared, because its might was too terrifying, it caused their hearts to be awed, and they were unable to see the scene of the battle any longer. But when their vision cleared up, all of them noticed to their shock that it wasn't just the eternal will that had vanished. Even the city governor, Hung Tianxuo, had vanished. Only Ling Xuanzi stood towering in midair. His black hair hung loosely behind him like a god, and his entire body flowed with the glow of the Tao, while his imposing aura devoured the mountains and rivers, and he reigned supreme in the heavens and the earth. Who wouldn't know that in this dangerous and intense battle, this young 7th-level Great Emperor would be the one to survive until the end? How could this be possible? The silent atmosphere was broken by a wave of cries, and the expressions of those emperors changed. The eternal will was a force that was far more terrifying than the emperor ancestors, yet it had actually been destroyed. This had completely exceeded their expectations. How terrifying! When did such a peak emperor appear in the starry sky? He killed a Tao ancestor. Who would believe that? Many people felt like they were going crazy. They were deeply shocked. Hung Tianxuo was forcefully suppressed in a head-on collision, and he's covered in injuries. Moreover, he was still unable to change the outcome even after utilizing a trump card like the Eternal Will. This proves that Ling Xuanzi possesses an extremely terrifying territory as well, and he can crush the Eternal Will. Someone's eyes flickered and his tone was filled with deep fear. At this moment, even Yu Duqiu, Xiang Xiaoyuan, and the other peerless martial emperors could not remain calm. The combat strength Lin Sun displayed was so great that it completely toppled their understanding and exceeded their imaginations. He was actually able to destroy an undying will and suppress a Tao ancestor. How terrifying was this? One should know that he was merely a peak 7th-level Great Emperor. Since ancient times, nothing like this has ever happened in Beginning City. A city lord has been killed. If this news were spread, the entire vast 1,000 battle domains would be in chaos. Many people looked at Lin Sun under the high sky in the distance with different expressions and emotions. This young Great Emperor had miraculously walked out of the 9th district alive, which was unbelievable. Now, he had even set off a storm of blood in front of the city lord's mansion. Even the city lord was killed. Everyone knew that today's incident would probably be recorded in history and passed down from generation to generation. After all, he was the first Great Emperor to walk out of the 9th district, and he was also the first person to slaughter the city lord of Beginning City. Just these two incidents were enough to be remembered for generations to come. While everyone was still in shock, swoosh, Lin Sun's figure disappeared in the sky, and with a teleportation, he arrived behind the city lord's mansion. He looked down with a trace of coldness, when Xiaoheng's face turned green, and he looked panicked. As soon as he escaped from the city lord's mansion, he fell into a formation. Even though he used all sorts of methods, he was unable to escape. Who was the one who set up this formation? Boom! The surging power of the formation spread out like a raging sea, and it came from all directions, constantly suppressing Wen Xiaoheng. A white jade pendant floated in front of Wen Xiaoheng, and it emitted wisps of strange power that constantly dispelled the pressure. But that was all he could do. He couldn't escape it all. How could this be? Wen Xiaoheng suddenly felt regret. He regretted putting all his hopes on Heng Tianxua. A sneer suddenly sounded. Wen Xiaoheng, Heng Tianxua is already dead. The City Lord Mansion can't help you this time. Wen Xiaoheng's expression changed as if he was struck by lightning. Ling Xuanzi, you set up this formation? That's right. As Lin Sun spoke, he entered the formation. When he first returned to Beginning City from the teleportation formation, Lin Sun had secretly sent Little Five to the City Lord's Mansion to set up the Fallen Dao formation. It was to prevent Wen Xiaoheng from escaping at the last moment. It was also because of this that Lin Sun deliberately delayed time when he was fighting the Seven Sinners, so that Little Five could secretly set up the formation. Otherwise, it would be too late if he killed his way to the City Lord's Mansion and set up the formation. Aren't you worried about offending the Heng clan by killing Heng Tianxua? Aren't you worried about being wanted by the various immortal passes in the boundless thousand battles domain? Ling Xuanzi shouted, but it was filled with cowardice. He was really afraid. In the undead soul realm, he was almost killed by Lin Sun and luckily survived. Later on, in the Sky Universe Tower, if it wasn't for Granny Snow who saved him, he wouldn't have the chance to escape. And this time, he seemed to have no hope of escaping. This made him feel like he was on the verge of collapse. As one of the 5 ultimate emperors of the Wen clan, he had never experienced such a setback since he started cultivating. Do you think I'll be afraid when I've already killed him? Lin Sun walked forward with a cold gaze. Wen Xiaoheng felt a chill run down his spine and said, Ling Xuanzi, as long as you let me go this time, I swear that I'll never be your enemy in the future, and I'll even give you enough compensation. How about it? Lin Sun shook his head. That's why I didn't make a move immediately. I just want to ask you something. Just for the girl named Luo Ling from the Luo clan, you didn't hesitate to capture me as a gift for her? When Xiaoheng hurriedly said, absolutely not. I only heard that Luo Ling hates a guy named Lin Sun to the bone. I'm Lin Sun. Lin Sun interrupted. When Xiaoheng stiffened and his pupils widened. It's really you. I guess that Lin Sun was the only one who became an emperor on the Starry Sky ancient path in the past 100,000 years. How could there be another Ling Xuanzi? He completely understood. An unspeakable anger surged in his heart. That damn me Wuya and Yin Euro. How dare they collude to deceive me? Boom! Lin Sun stepped forward and pressed his palm forward. A terrifying light rushed out and directly suppressed Wen Xiaoheng. Wen Xiaoheng's body exploded and blood splattered everywhere. To Lin Sun's surprise, Wen Xiaoheng's spirit managed to escape. Wen Xiaoheng screamed, Lin Sun, you don't know that no one who offends the Wen clan has a good ending. In the next moment, a strange fluctuation of restrictions arose within his soul core, and then it fell into deathly silence and didn't make another sound. If one were to look carefully, one would notice that the surroundings of his primordial spirit were covered in strands of restriction fluctuations. God-forbidding seal. Lin Sun had expected this. When he killed Fang Xuanjin, the latter had also used the God-forbidding seal to seal his spirit. Unless an immortal-level figure took action, no one could break this seal. It was extremely powerful. According to Cyan Sparrow, this was very common in the Eternal World. When the Immortal Emperor clan's elites went out to train, they would prepare many life-saving measures, and the God-forbidding seal was one of them. Unfortunately, this kind of restriction was completely useless to Lin Sun. Boom! In the next moment, he suppressed Wen Xiaoheng's spirit inside the abyssal sword cauldron. As the Order Phoenix flames circulated, Wen Xiaoheng's spirit was destroyed along with the God-forbidding seal. Next, Lin Sun put away Wen Xiaoheng's belongings one by one, and then told Little Five to put away the Fallen Dao formation. It was also at this moment that Lin Sun vented a lot of the accumulated hatred in his heart. He scanned his surroundings and keenly sensed that there were many emperor's auras scattered around the copying area, watching his every move. Even though these auras did not show any hostility, Lin Sun still frowned and made a decision. I'll settle me Wuya and Yinyu down first, then leave this city immediately. Whoosh! His figure flashed, and he teleported into the void, disappearing without a trace. On the same day, Starting City sank into an unprecedented uproar. Because of Hung Tianxua and Wen Xiaoheng's deaths, many people were in an uproar, and discussions about Lin Sun's battle prowess became the hottest topic in the city. Ling Xuanzi will probably be wanted by the various immortal heavenly passes after causing such a bloody scene. Those forces stationed in different immortal passes will definitely not forgive him, because he has already broken the rules set by all the forces in the eternal world. Many people came to this conclusion. This was a huge matter, and it was not as simple as offending the Hung family or the Wen family. This was related to the rules of the entire vast thousand battles domain. This rule had been set by all the great forces in the eternal world a long time ago. Otherwise, why would the 49 immortal passes of various sizes be guarded and controlled by the forces from the eternal world in turn? It was to defend the order and rules set by them. Now, Lin Sun had killed Hung Tianxua, the city lord, and this was equivalent to completely trampling on the rules of the first immortal pass. He was bound to be seen as a criminal, and the forces guarding the immortal passes would not tolerate him. The city cannot be without a leader for a single day. Hung Tianxua's death will definitely alarm the Hung family. Who knows, a terrifying figure from the Hung family might rush over in the near future to quell this chaos. As for Ling Xuanzi, he will probably be the first to be wanted someone's side. The influence of this matter was too bad, and it was destined that it would not be quelled in a short period of time. And Ling Xuanzi's situation would also be affected in an unpredictable manner because of this day's matter. P.S. I'm stuck. The second update is a bit late. Chapter 2559. In an inn, Lin Sun bade farewell to Mi Wuya and Yen Yuro. From Wen Xiaoheng's belongings, Lin Sun found the solution to the forbidden curse of 10,000 lethargy and helped Mi Wuya and Yen Yuro remove the shackles on their life souls, allowing them to regain their freedom. For this, both of them were extremely grateful. They even wanted to go with Lin Sun at all costs. It seemed that they would go through water and tread on fire for Lin Sun. But Lin Sun refused. He did not want the two to be implicated because of him. Moreover, he didn't dare to guarantee that he would be able to protect the two of them in the upcoming journey. In the end, Lin Sun left alone. The Castellan's mansion was desolate and the ground was in a mess. With Hung Tianxua's death, the soldiers stationed there had long fled. There was a huge ancient Taoist right in the central area of the Castellan's mansion. Lin Sun came to this place according to Cyan Sparrow's guidance. There was a transmission channel in this ancient Taoist right. One only needed to insert 10 star source to leave Starting City and go to an ancient ruins called the Myriad Star Shoal. After passing through the Myriad Star Shoal and trekking through a dozen different battlefields, one would arrive at the next immortal pass. For Lin Sun, the most important thing was to leave immediately. After all, Hung Tianxua's death would definitely cause an unpredictable upheaval. It might even alarm the forces belonging to the Hung family. Similarly, news of Wen Xiaoheng's death would definitely spread. This also meant that the longer he stayed in Starting City, the more danger he would be in. Brother Ling. But just as Lin Sun set foot on the ancient Taoist rite, a clear and melodious voice rang out. Xiang Xiaoyuan and Yu Duqiu had already arrived together. You two still want to invite me to join you? Lin Sun could not help but be surprised. Yes. Xiang Xiaoyuan nodded and looked at Lin Sun with eyes full of splendor. I just killed Hung Tianxua and Wen Xiaoheng. This is equivalent to completely offending both the Wen and Hung families. Aren't you worried about drawing fire to yourselves? Lin Sun asked with interest. If you are overcautious and indecisive, I'm afraid you won't be able to fight your way to the eternal world from the Kiliakosm battle domains alive. Xiang Xiaoyuan's eyes glistened as she smiled faintly. Duqiu also nodded. Lin Sun thought for a moment and agreed. All right, if we have the chance to meet in the 9th heaven pass of immortality, I will definitely not refuse your kind invitation. As soon as he finished speaking, he waved his sleeve, and 10 stellar sources whistled out and embedded themselves in different positions on the ancient Tao grounds. Obscure and magical space fluctuation rolled, wrapping Lin's figure and disappearing. Let's go, Duqiu said. Before Lin Sun left, those who had collected 10 stellar sources in the city had already left in advance and embarked on their journey. As for those experts who did not collect enough stellar source, they could only stay in the city and wait for the next opportunity to train. Xiang Xiaoyu nodded at Duqiu. The journey of the great Tao, the struggle to cross the Emperor's Road, the strong were always on the road. When Lin Sun and the other great emperors left, the starting city was obviously deserted. But the discussion about Lin Sun was still the hottest topic in the streets. Perhaps in the countless years to come, what happened today would continue to be passed down. Those cultivators who entered the first trial of immortality were destined to hear the legendary name of Ling Xuanzi. Stars Beach. This was a world of ruins, just like a beach, but it was scattered with huge and barren star remains. An hour later, Lin Sun came here. He randomly found a huge star remains, sat cross-legged, and began to count the spoils. This massacre started when they left the trial world. They first killed Hung Zhan and the other guards, then entered the starting city, defeated nearly 100 guards of the city lord's mansion, and wiped out the 7 sinners one by one. When they reached the city lord's mansion, Hung, Tianxuo, and Wen Shaoheng were killed one after another. Although it was bloody, the harvest was huge. There were more than 50 underworld pearls collected. In addition, the number of first-class eternal void source crystals was also spectacular, totaling up to 28 million. Among them, Hung Tianxuo contributed the most to the spoils. As the city lord, this old guy had plundered a lot of wealth during his stay in the starting city. There were more than 11 million first-class eternal void source crystals. Putting aside the underworld pearl and the eternal void source crystal, the other treasures such as emperor weapons, divine materials, spiritual materials, elixirs, cultivation manuals, secret maps of cultivation techniques, and other treasures could be piled up into a small hill. It should be noted that these were all collected by sovereign realm cultivators. Even Lin Sun himself couldn't estimate the specific value of these treasures. But no matter what, Lin Sun didn't have to worry about wealth in a short time. After counting the spoils, Lin Sun took out the abyssal sword cauldron and refined the underworld pearls one by one. 3 complete great ways were condensed into 9 netherworld Tao patterns, all of which belonged to the great way of the netherworld in the last era. They were the way of judgment, the way of forbidden disaster, and the way of burning evil. Among them, the way of judgment was the most terrible. Once it was used, it was like a divine punishment ruling life and death. The way of forbidden disaster was a power to suppress disasters. It could dissolve and seal the power of the great way that targeted the soul of a cultivator. The way of burning evil was the most mysterious. When it was refined to the extreme, it could condense the fire of burning soul, which was specialized in exterminating all evil and sin. In addition to the Soul Reaper Tao, 10 Directions Yama Tao, and Purgatory Tao, Lin Sun had condensed 6 out of the 9 netherworld Tao patterns. Only 3 had yet to be condensed. According to Lin Sun's estimation, he still needed to collect around 40 underworld pearls to completely condense the 3 netherworld Tao patterns. At that time, the 9 netherworld Tao patterns would most likely undergo a new transformation. After a long time, Lin Sun stood up from the huge star remains. I'll have to be careful in the future. Cyan Sparrow had said that killing a city lord like Hung Tianxuo was equivalent to trampling on the common rules of the boundless 1,000 battle domains. This also meant that in the future, he would be regarded as a wanted criminal by every force in the Immortal Heaven Pass. The consequences were definitely severe. It was something that had never happened before. No Immortal Emperor clan could tolerate the existence of a ruthless person like Lin Sun who trampled on the rules. However, Lin Sun was not worried about anything. Even if he was wanted, he could just change his identity. Moreover, Lin Sun didn't believe that those powers that were distributed throughout the immortal passes would really work together to deal with him. In short, Lin Sun had enough confidence to continue and would not be afraid to move forward. Without further delay, he continued his journey under Cyan Sparrow's guidance. He traveled through different battlefields, experiencing tempering and killing. He cut his way through brambles and thorns. He traveled day and night. Along the way, Lin Sun consolidated his cultivation and completely solidified his Dao foundation after stepping into the 7th stage Emperor realm. It was precisely this expedition and training that allowed Lin Sun to have a clear and deep understanding of his own cultivation. If he unleashed his full strength and supported the power of the Abyssal Sword Cauldron, he could suppress a Dao ancestor like Hung Tianxua in a head-on clash. However, if he did not borrow the power of the Nirvana Flame of Order, it would be very difficult to kill him. In other words, it was easy to defeat, but difficult to kill. Did this mean that he had broken the natural barrier that belonged to a Dao ancestor? Lin Sun thought about it for a long time and thought that this should only be considered as shaking him, but not truly killing him. Yes, in the eyes of outsiders, suppressing a Dao ancestor like Hung Tianxua was like breaking an unprecedented record. It could be said to be an extraordinary feat, but in Lin Sun's view, he could not truly say that he had suppressed Hung Tianxua. Since he could not suppress Hung Tianxua, he could not say that he had broken the natural barrier. Of course, this was Lin Sun's personal opinion. He still did not know that being able to defeat Hung Tianxua like this could be said to be a great event that could shock the ages in the eternal true world. Lin Sun walked alone, conquering countless galaxies and passing through many dangerous and unpredictable battlefields. With his current cultivation, ordinary dangers were rarely able to threaten him. But even so, the dangers and killing tribulations along the way were already innumerable. There were devil's dens floating in the starry sky, like densely packed nests. Falling into them was like falling into countless shattered purgatory worlds, and one would be attacked by terrifying devil chi. There were hundreds of thousands of feet tall, white bone mountains rooted in the sea of blood, releasing a mysterious murderous aura that could easily kill a martial emperor silently. Later, Lin Sun found out that it was very likely to be a beast tooth that belonged to some terrifying divine beast from the last era. There were wild forests, where when the branches swayed, it was as if hundreds of thousands of sword chi were dancing wildly. It was gorgeous and dazzling, enough to make Ninth Realm ancestors tremble in fear. There were some dangerous and terrifying places that Lin Sun had to avoid, not daring to enter rashly. But even though he had experienced danger, it was also an eye-opener for Lin Sun. What he saw, felt, and comprehended had all turned into a part of his cultivation. Finally, after 3 months, Lin Sun broke through a collapsed and folded broken battlefield and entered a vast world. An ancient city stood in this world, bathed in divine splendor and emitting a majestic aura. Looking from afar, this city looked like an ancient tiger. The second immortal pass, Hidden Tiger City. Hidden Tiger City was a very ordinary place among the 49 immortal passes in the boundless Thousand Battlefield. It was not a big pass, and it was far from being comparable to the first immortal pass, the Beginning City. But looking from afar, the scale of this city was still far from ordinary, ancient and vigorous, emitting an ancient aura. Whoosh! Lin Sun spread his divine awareness and immediately noticed that in front of the city gate, which was thousands of feet high, there were a group of soldiers with a murderous aura, each of whom had the cultivation of martial emperor realm. And on the city gate, there were black decrees filled with abundant murderous intent. Although they were far away, they still emitted a frightening blood-red luster. On each black decree, there was a different announcement written in blood-red handwriting. Looking carefully, it was impressively a bounty warrant. Lin Sun's eyes narrowed slightly. He had never seen such a scene in the Beginning City. Literature Museum. Chapter 2560. Lin Sun pondered for a moment. Then his figure transformed and his appearance changed. With his current cultivation level, no one would be able to see through his true appearance unless it was someone who possessed some kind of innate ability or a Tao ancestor. Lin Sun's figure shifted through the void and approached. A group of soldiers stood guard at the entrance of Crouching Tiger City. Like the soldiers at Starting City, they were all Emperor Realm cultivators, and all of them were brimming with divine light. In particular, the one leading them was a Ninth Realm ancestor. Lin Sun really did not know what mistake this Ninth Realm ancestor had committed in the past to be reduced to such a state. Near the city gates, there were many people looking at the black edict pasted on the city walls. As he neared, Lin Sun saw that on the black edict, there were portraits that were vivid and lifelike, and below them were the contents of the bounty. On every black edict, there are different Tao diagrams imprinted on it. These seals represent the dignity of different immortal emperor clans. These are their seals. Being imprinted on the wanted list means that this wanted list was issued by an immortal emperor clan. Qin Ke transmitted to Lin Sun. In the vast thousand battle domain, there were 49 immortal heaven passes controlled by different immortal emperor clans. They were like the makers and controllers of order and rules, existences that countless cultivators had to look up to and revere. And these black edicts wanted people were all ruthless people who had violated the rules of a certain immortal heaven pass and were viewed as criminals. Recently, there have been more and more ruthless people wanted. Haha, don't make a fuss over nothing. Since ancient times, there would be a batch of Emperor Realm experts gathering from the vast thousand world every once in a while. Among them, there would inevitably be a ruthless person who doesn't care about the rules. After all, they are all great emperor existences, able to call the wind and summon the rain in their respective universes. After arriving at the vast thousand battle domain, how could they bear the restrictions of the rules? Nearby, there were people discussing in low voices. Look, the number one wanted criminal is still Tsang Fu. There hasn't been any change in 8,000 years. It is rumored that when this person was listed as a wanted criminal, he was already an ultimate 8th great emperor. Once he killed some nobles from the eternal true world in the 18th barrier of immortality, he became a wanted criminal. But even now, 8,000 years have passed, and no one has been able to do anything to him. Instead, he has killed quite a number of powerful immortal emperors, and he can be said to be a matchless, ruthless person. The person in second place is Blade Bearer. His ranking hasn't changed in a long time. Of all the vicious fugitives, Blade Bearer is definitely the most mysterious. Even now, no one knows where he came from. However, his cultivation base in the Tao of the Blade is so terrifying that he can kill stage 9 patriarchs as easily as killing chickens. Listening to people's discussion, Lin Sun also noticed. The black edicts were arranged in different order. The one ranked highest was a person called Tsang Fusheng. In the portrait, he was a man with wild bearing and long hair. He was dressed in a white robe with wide sleeves, and he stood on a broken world. There was a 7-inch golden coffin floating above his head. At first glance, this person exuded a proud and aloof air, as if he was the most domineering person in the world. According to the information on the bounty list, Tsang Fusheng came from Wenshu Galaxy, which was ranked 3rd in the vast thousand worlds. He was an ultimate 8th great emperor, and he was extremely terrifying. And the bounty on his head was as high as 30 million eternal void origin crystals. It's been 8,000 years, and he still hasn't left. Is he worried that once he reaches the eternal true world, he will be hunted down even more terrifyingly? Lin Sun thought to himself. Looking further down on the second black decree, there was a mysterious saber-bearer. He was wearing a bamboo hat, and his whole body was filled with an obscure aura of chaos. It was impossible to see his face clearly. Only a rusty saber could be seen on his back. According to the notice, the cultivation of the man with the blade was only at the peak of the 7th level martial emperor realm. However, in the past 1,000 years, he had appeared in different places in the Pass of Immortality and killed many powerful ninth-level martial ancestors. No one knew where he came from, which was why he was called the Man with the Blade. And the bounty on his head had reached 27 million eternal void origin crystals. This guy is also a ruthless person. Lin Sun thought to himself. With his current power, he no longer cared about his peers, but the Man with the Blade was different. With just one look, he could tell that he was extraordinary. He continued to look. There were more than 100 black edicts, and the information of different wanted criminals were drawn on them. Every single person who was captured would be given a great reward. It's been 8,000 years, and this Tsang Fu Sheng still hasn't stepped into the ninth realm. Otherwise, he would have gone to the eternal true world a long time ago. Just as Lin Sun was looking at the black edict, a pleasant voice rang in the air. Lin Sun turned around and saw a woman standing beside him. She was dressed in a green robe and was playing with a folding fan in her hand. It was obvious that she was disguised as a man. She had bright eyes, white teeth, and fair skin. Her male attire gave her a free and easy temperament. Sensing Lin Sun's gaze, the green-robed woman did not mind and continued. There's also the Man with the Blade. His whereabouts are mysterious, and he appears and disappears unpredictably. I'm afraid he has already stepped into the ultimate 8th realm Emperor realm. How could he be as simple as the ultimate 7th realm ancestor mentioned on the wanted list? Lin Sun could not help but be surprised. It seemed that the green-robed woman knew the situation in the great 1,000 battle domains like the back of her hand. Many people nearby heard the green-robed woman's comments, and someone asked, "Could it be that you've seen the Man with the Blade?" "I haven't seen him before, but I can deduce it." The green-robed woman's eyes were clear, and she said indifferently, "In 1,000 years, it would be a joke if the Man with the Blade was unable to step into the ultimate 8th realm Emperor realm." Many people nodded inwardly. However, no matter if it's Tsang Fusheng or the Man with the Blade, they are both wanted criminals. Perhaps they are famous, but if we really compare them, they might not be the most terrifying figures in the great 1,000 battle domains. The green-robed woman changed the topic and instantly attracted the attention of the crowd. Then, in your opinion, which peerless figures in the great 1,000 battle domains are the strongest? Someone couldn't help but ask. It's hard to say. The green-robed woman's voice carried deep meaning. However, one day, when the battlefield of the gods near the 49th Pass of Immortality truly appears, then perhaps we'll know that those people are the strongest existences on the Emperor's Road. Battlefield of Gods. Many people's expressions changed slightly. Lin Sun couldn't help but be curious, and he transmitted his voice to Qing Quebec. It's an extremely ancient legend that has been circulating for 100,000 years. It says that outside the 49th Immortal Pass, there's a mysterious forbidden area called the Battlefield of God's Ruins. There's a supreme treasure from the previous era. When the Battlefield of Gods appears in the ruins, it means that the supreme treasure is about to appear. Qing Ke quickly said, "Let's not talk about whether the legend is true or false. The Battlefield of God's Ruins is the most terrifying and mysterious forbidden area in the great 1,000 battle domains. In the past 100,000 years, no one, regardless of their cultivation, has been able to walk out alive. As for the so-called supreme treasure, it has never appeared before. No one knows whether the legend is true or false." Lin Sun finally understood. This green-robed woman suddenly mentioned the Battlefield of Gods. Could it be that she's heard some news that the Battlefield of Gods is about to appear? At this moment, suddenly a group of soldiers walked out from the city gate and arrived in front of the city gate. One of the soldiers took out a new black talisman. With a wave of his hand, it turned into a black flowing light and stuck on the city gate. Moreover, this new black talisman was ranked 9th. This scene instantly caused a stir in the surroundings, and everyone looked over in unison. Ling Xuanzi? Why haven't I heard of this person before? He's too cruel. He actually killed the Lord of Starting City 3 months ago. That's the ancestor of a Dao. My God, he's only at the peak of the 7th level, but he caused a bloodbath in Starting City and destroyed the Castellan's mansion. An uproar broke out. Everyone was dumbfounded. At this moment, a cold light flashed in the depths of Lin Sun's eyes. Obviously, what happened in Starting City had already spread to Crouching Tiger City like a storm. It could be foreseen that in the following time, the wanted list about him was bound to appear in more and more Immortal Paths. Lin Sun's expression did not change. He raised his eyes and looked carefully. A portrait was reflected in the black talisman. It was the figure of him standing in the void when he fought in front of the Castellan's mansion. In the wanted list, the crimes that he had committed were recorded in detail. For example, after returning from the trial world, he went on a killing spree and set off a bloody storm in Starting City. The wanted list was 6 million eternal void source crystals. It was ranked 9th on the wanted list. And the ones who issued the wanted list were the One and Hung Immortal Emperor clans. There were 2 jade seals and palm prints on the list that represented the 2 Immortal Emperor clans. According to the list, this person should have entered the vast thousand battle domain in the past 6 months. But he did such a bloody thing. He's definitely a peerless murderer. Didn't you see? This Ling Xuanzi actually came from a broken place like the Starry Sky Ancient Path. Everyone was discussing and they were all shocked. The green-robed woman suddenly said, "The Starry Sky Ancient Path is not simple. Hundreds of thousands of years ago, it was ranked first in the vast thousand world. At that time, who knows how many powerful figures emerged from the Starry Sky Ancient Path. As a result, almost no one in the vast thousand battle domain dared to provoke any great emperor that walked out of the Starry Sky Ancient Path." Many people disagreed. So what if it was glorious back then? Glory will always be blown away by the wind and rain. Now, the Starry Sky Ancient Path position in the vast thousand battle domain is not even in the top 100. The green-robed woman shook her head. "You guys think too simply. It's fine if we don't talk about it. These things are indeed in the past." There was a trace of emotion in her voice. Lin Sun could not help but be surprised. This green-robed woman seemed to know a lot of secrets about the Starry Sky Ancient Path. This was rare. At this moment, Lin Sun's eyes narrowed. He felt a piercing chill quietly appear nearby. It was extremely obscure. However, the coldness of the killing intent was simply incomparable. Chapter 2561. Frost. Lin Sun's first reaction was that legendary assassin from the hidden space world that hadn't made an appearance until now. But right after that, Lin Sun rejected it, because right at this instant, an illusory figure suddenly stabbed a sword towards the green-robed woman by his side. The sword chi was extremely swift, and it silently pierced through countless spaces. The strangest thing was that along with this sword strike, this expanse of the heavens and the earth seemed as if it was isolated, and the others in the vicinity were completely unaware, as if they weren't affected by it. Only Lin Sun, who was the closest to the green-robed woman, noticed it at the first possible moment, and he was shocked in his heart, because that assassin was absolutely an expert that was even more terrifying than the assassin from the hidden space world. This sword strike contained the attack of his entire lifetime, and it was concentrated at a single point and confined the heavens and the earth like a shapeless cage. Moreover, being within it was bound to be impossible to avoid. Such an assassination technique was simply like seizing the fortune of the heavens and the earth, and it converged the essence of the Tao of slaughter from the ages into a single strike. It was strange and ruthless to an inconceivable extent. The person that was assassinated would surely die. At this extremely dangerous moment, the green-robed woman seemed to have noticed it as well, and she suddenly opened the jade fan in her hand to block before her. Bang! However, her reaction was a bit too slow, and the sword chi was peerlessly terrifying. It instantly shattered the jade fan into powder. On the other hand, the momentum of this sword didn't reduce at all, and it stabbed straight over. Bang! Bang! The defensive energy on the green-robed woman's body was torn apart successively, and her expression turned completely pale. At the same time, the numerous defensive magic treasures on her body exploded apart and were instantly destroyed. They were utterly unable to resist the sharpness of the sword move. This string of events occurred in an instant. On the other hand, the person who attacked with the sword was unprecedentedly ferocious and fierce, and it far surpassed the assassin from the hidden space world. Even Lin Sun, who was the closest to the attack, was affected by the sword move that was filled with this sword move. It seemed as if this sword move intended to grind the green-robed woman and the surrounding heavens and the earth apart. Bang! This sword strike had finally broken through all the defensive energy on the green-robed woman's entire body, and it was about to stab into her body. Right at this critical moment, a finger flashed like it had a tacit understanding, and it appeared on the edge of the sword before flicking lightly. Dang! A deafening rumble resounded out. It seemed to be a flick of a finger, yet it was like a divine hammer that weighed 50,000 kilograms had smashed down, and the fierce energy and peerless killing intent accumulated within that sword strike was completely blasted to the point of dispersing and emitting intense droning that tore apart one's eardrums. It was Lin Sun who did it. In this moment of life and death, he immediately blocked the sword. At the same time, he forcefully withstood the peerless attack that surged over from the sword, the ancient killing intent. In fact, he had to take action because the power of this sword had already covered the place where he stood. Whether the green-robed woman could block this sword or not, Lin Sun would be affected. Rumble. Although he had blocked the sword, the murderous intent and terrifying power that the sword was filled with rushed into his body. It was strange and domineering. In an instant, it seemed like his internal organs, meridians, and acupoints, as well as his natal emperor realm, would be torn to shreds. Lin Sun took a deep breath. His eyes were deep, and his cultivation was running like an abyss, wiping out the peerless killing intent one by one. The assassin seemed to be shocked. Never had he imagined that his ultimate strike would actually be blocked by someone, and even the energy released by his sword would be forcefully suppressed and dispersed. Kill! The assassin's reaction was extremely shrewd. After all, he was a peerless expert. When his attack failed, he suddenly withdrew his sword and transformed into an illusory shadow that fled towards the distance. How could Lin Sun allow this assassin to leave? He grabbed out in midair. Bang! An enormous hand tore through the sky like an eternal veil of night that stretched across the sky. It blotted out the sky, enveloped the world, and locked down all directions. The heavens and the earth outside the city gate instantly collapsed and fell into rumbling. At this moment, all the nearby soldiers and cultivators were alarmed, and their expressions changed. What terrifying strength! Clang! Lin Sun's enormous palm was about to envelop the assassin. The assassin's figure suddenly flashed while sword chi swept out from his palm, and he instantly stabbed out a few hundred times. Every single strike was boundlessly fierce and condensed with killing intent. In an instant, Lin Sun's palm was riddled with holes and torn apart. Seizing this opportunity, the assassin's figure flickered and he fled into the distance. Unfortunately, I have to conceal my identity, so I can't fully utilize my cultivation. Lin Sun suddenly felt slightly hesitant. Right at this instant of hesitation, a heavy and icy cold voice resounded from within crouching Tiger City. Bastard, where do you think you're going? Countless strands of violet lightning shot out explosively, and then a mighty figure that was bathed in surging lightning appeared in midair. His imposing aura was so formidable that it caused the nearby soldiers and cultivators to feel suffocated, and they were astounded and felt extremely oppressed. The assassin had already fled extremely far away. Yet at this moment, his entire body trembled while he was greatly shocked. Because a blade formed from violet lightning had slashed at the space he was teleporting in, and the destructive might it emanated caused his figure to be directly shaken to the point of staggering back. On the other hand, the mighty figure that was bathed in lightning had arrived explosively a long time ago. Rumble. Strands of dazzling and resplendent laws leaped about in the hands of this mighty figure, causing the heavens and the earth to be torn apart and transformed into a shattered scene. His hands interweaved together, and they transformed into various complicated and vast might of lightning that struck explosively in midair. Damn it! The assassin was only able to let out a loud cry before he was enveloped by violet lightning that covered the sky, and then his body exploded apart while his soul was obliterated. The ancestor of One Dao. Lin Sun's heart shook. He knew that the person that had appeared was a true imperial ancestor that had grasped a complete Grand Dao law, and only then would he possess such might and imposing aura. It was even to the extent that this person's imposing aura was slightly stronger than Hung Tianxia. Yuran, are you all right? Meanwhile, a tall, handsome, and extraordinary violet-robed young man had arrived hastily by the green-robed young woman's side with a concerned expression. I'm fine. The green-robed young woman's gaze was clear while her beautiful and fair face was filled with tranquility and calmness. Being caught off guard and suffering an assassination seemed to not be too shocking to her. However, when facing the violet-robed young man's concern, her ink-black brows knit together imperceptibly, and she seemed to be slightly conflicted. Rumble. The ancestor of One Dao had returned, and he arrived swiftly. The surroundings were deathly silent. The blazing violet lightning was restrained to transform into a dignified middle-aged man that wore a high crown and ancient clothes, and he seemed like an overlord of the ancient times. His bearing was lofty like a mountain, and his eyes flickered with an overbearing force that could crush everything. This was the might of an imperial ancestor. Greetings, city governor. At this moment, the expressions of all the soldiers near the city gate turned solemn as they bowed in unison. The nearby cultivators revealed expressions of sudden understanding as well. Peng Qianhe. His name was Imperial Ancestor Qianhe, and he was from the Eternal Emperor clan, the Peng clan. Presently, he resided in Tiger Den City. According to rumor, he'd already attained the peak of the Imperial Ancestor realm, and he might break through into the Eternal realm at any moment. Lin Sun recognized him as well, because he'd heard of him on the way here. The Peng clan was one of the 4 great Eternal Emperor clans of the One, Hung, Peng, and He clans, and their resources and reserves weren't inferior to the One clan, the Wen Shaoheng and Hung clan, that Hung Tianxia belonged to. He killed an assassin with a single move. He's truly formidable. What's the background of that assassin? The man who rescued that girl is also a powerful figure. At that critical moment, he actually resisted the assassin and prevented the assassin from escaping. Furthermore, it also prevented the assassin from escaping. Otherwise, the assassin might have escaped. Discussions arose in the field. The situation had calmed down. Many cultivators were alarmed and rushed over from afar because they'd sensed the fluctuation of primordial qi. Miss Yuran. Peng Qianhe immediately walked up to the woman with a trace of apology in his eyes. It's my fault that I didn't consider it thoroughly. I didn't expect that there would be an assassin who dared to commit murder outside the city gate. I've frightened you. As the ancestor of One Dao, he was quite polite and respectful to the green-robed woman, which surprised Lin Sun. I'm fine. It's all thanks to this fellow practitioner's timely help this time. The green-robed woman said, and looked at Lin Sun with a touch of softness in her eyes. Thank you very much. It was also at this time that Peng Qianhe looked at Lin Sun. His eyes had returned to their original majesty, and he nodded and said, My young friend, you're very strong. You saved Miss Yuran this time. I'll definitely give you enough reward. Lin Sun shook his head. It's a coincidence. I just wanted to protect myself. As for the reward, forget it. He was telling the truth. Peng Qianhe couldn't help looking at Lin Sun in a daze. At this time, the purple-robed young man who had rushed over before said indifferently, You must thank what you deserve. Otherwise, outsiders will laugh at our Peng family for not knowing the etiquette. Tell me, what kind of reward do you want? As long as we can do it, we can satisfy you. He said it was a repayment, yet his words revealed a feeling of charity. From the discussion of the people nearby, Lin Sun already knew that this purple-robed young man was also a member of the Peng family. His name was Peng Tianxiang, a peerless great emperor who was extremely famous in Tiger-dwelling city. And Peng Qianhe, the city governor, was his third uncle. Before Lin Sun could reply, The green-robed woman frowned and said coldly, Peng Tianxiang, how can you say that? Peng Tianxiang smiled bitterly. Yuran, I'm going to thank this benefactor on your behalf. Peng Tianhe laughed heartily and said, Miss Yuran, Tianxiang means well, but his words are a little inappropriate. Please don't misunderstand him. You don't have to worry about it. I want to repay him personally. The green-robed woman's tone was full of displeasure. Even in front of Peng Tianhe, she didn't pretend to be angry. Even so, Peng Tianhe was still smiling without any annoyance. In this way, the green-robed woman's background was even more extraordinary. Fellow practitioner, I know you must have doubts in your heart. Why don't you take this opportunity to enter the city with me and have a drink? It's also a chance for me to express my gratitude in person. The green-robed woman looked at Lin Sun, and her eyes became gentle and soft. Obviously, she was sincerely grateful to Lin Sun for his help before. But this scene made Peng Tianxiang's eyes gloomy. He glanced at Lin Sun coldly with a silent warning. It seemed that if Lin Sun dared to agree, he would make an unforgivable mistake. P.S. When Goldfish completely straightens out the plot in these days, she will continue to add updates. Well, there will be explosive updates. Chapter 2562. Lin Sun raised his eyebrows. How could he not see this? It could be said that if he really accepted the invitation of the green-robed woman, he would definitely offend Peng Tianxiang and even arouse the hostility of Peng Tianhe, the emperor ancestor. Lin Sun was not afraid of this, but he did not want to get involved in this trouble. So, he refused without thinking. There is no need to thank me. I have something important to do. Goodbye. After saying that, he left directly. His straightforward and direct action stunned the green-robed woman, Peng Tianhe, and Peng Tianxiang. When the green-robed woman was about to ask him to stay, Lin Sun had already disappeared into the city gate. She raised her eyebrows, and a trace of surprise appeared in her eyes. Over the years, all those who saw him would fight to be the first to please him. Even some of the prideful people in Eternal True World would show him some respect when they saw him, and they would be incredibly polite. But this guy, he seemed to be avoiding the god of plague. This guy is quite tactful. He knows that he comes from the boundless world and cannot afford to be repaid by us. Peng Tianxiang laughed. He was very satisfied with Lin Sun's choice to leave. He turned his head to look at the green-robed woman and smiled brightly. Yuran, didn't you say that you want to see the 3-inch lotus fish in Hidden Tiger City? I have already found them for you, and there are 2 of them, 1 yin and 1 yang. They are now kept in the governor's mansion. Let's go and have a look together. Peng Tianhe also said with a smile, the pair of 3-inch lotus fish is really amazing. 1 yin and 1 yang, forming a natural perfect Taoist rhyme. It is really rare. If Miss Yuran likes it, you can take it with you. The green-robed woman shook her head. I just experienced an assassination. I want to go back and rest. By the way, I hope you can investigate the assassin's background. After saying that, she left alone. From beginning to end, she did not look at Peng Tianxiang again. Peng Tianxiang was about to chase after her when he was stopped by Peng Tianhe, who said, Can't you see that Miss Yuran is not in a good mood? Or rather, you are too proactive and enthusiastic, which caused her to reject you. Peng Tianxiang's expression changed indeterminately as he said, Third uncle, you should be well aware that this is a superb opportunity. If she were to leave this city leisurely, who knows how many people would be lining up to pursue her. Time is precious. How can I not seize it? Peng Tianhe sneered. When we cultivate, we are not afraid of slaughter and life and death. We are not afraid of the trials and tribulations of danger. Only this one word, love, is the most profound and unfathomable. Even if one has monstrous power, sometimes it still cannot offset the might of the word love. He paused for a moment before he said, Miss Yuran is an incredibly intelligent woman. Everyone in the Eternal True World knows about her noble birth. If you want to capture her heart, you won't be able to do it in a short period of time. Peng Tianxiang couldn't help but let out a long sigh and said in a muffled voice, Third uncle, what do you think I should do? Peng Tianhe laughed heartily. In my entire life, I have never encountered such a thing. All the girls that caught my eye, which one of them did not obediently throw themselves into my arms? When he saw the sour expression on Peng Tianxiang's face, Peng Qianhe instantly stopped laughing and said, I might not know how to capture Miss Yuran's heart, but I do know that what she is most concerned about right now is the assassin's origins. Instead of sticking close to Miss Yuran every single day, why don't you help her investigate the assassin's origins? Perhaps you will obtain an unexpected effect. Peng Tianxiang's eyes lit up. He nodded and said, Third uncle, what you said is great. Remember, don't cause trouble to Miss Yuran's savior. This will only leave her with a bad impression of you. Peng Qianhe thought for a moment and said, Perhaps you can lower yourself and sincerely become friends with this person. See what he needs, cater to his interests, and give him kindness. No matter how much you look down on this person, if young Miss Yuran were to find out about this, she would definitely treat you differently. Peng Tianxiang frowned, then sucked in a deep breath and said, Third uncle, you are right. For Yuran, I can do anything. Peng Qianhe corrected him. You can't do anything. Just think about what she thinks and worry about what she worries about. In this way, how could she possibly feel aversion and rejection towards you? Peng Tianxiang felt like he was suddenly enlightened, and he couldn't help but sigh with admiration and bow deeply. As the saying goes, the older, the wiser. The ancients didn't lie. As soon as he entered Tiger Crouching City, it was filled with row upon row of ancient buildings. There were restaurants, tea houses, herb stores, pill stores, weapon stores. Every single one of them was a spacious palace, and it was filled with people and endless streams of horses and carriages. Compared to Genesis City, it was actually much more prosperous. For a time, Lin Sun couldn't help but be surprised. Compared to the dangerous and unfathomable places he'd passed through in the last 3 months, the prosperity and clamor of the city was undoubtedly able to make him relax, and he didn't have to be tense at all times. Fresh dragon turtle meat, slaughtered on the spot. This dragon turtle was captured from the illusory water divine lake, and it's a real emperor, great ominous beast. At the entrance of a magnificent restaurant, a golden dragon turtle the size of a hill was tied up there. Its belly had long been cut open, and its tendons were being pulled out, its flesh was being dug out, and its blood was being extracted. A plate of demon saint's heart and liver meat only costs 1,000 first-class eternity source gems. All of them are pure Saint King realm demonic beasts, and there are a total of 108 kinds. Their hearts and livers are taken out, roasted with different divine fires, and supplemented with rare treasures of the 4 seas. The taste is superb. Shouts and peddlers could be heard incessantly. The things being sold here were almost impossible to see in the outside world, and it was an eye-opener for Lin Sun. He strolled along the way and walked into some treasure houses and trading houses. Several hours later, he'd visited all the shops of a certain size in the city. In the 3 months since he left Genesis City and arrived at Tiger Crouching City, he'd gone through many dangerous battlefields and collected many treasures along the way. Those useless things were all sold by him, and the accumulated treasures of 3 months were sold at a good price, totaling more than 6 million first-class Eternity Source gems. But in the end, in order to buy the 8 underworld beads sold by the trading houses in the city, he spent nearly 5 million underworld beads at once. Lin Sun felt distressed at the speed of spending money. It couldn't be helped. The price of a treasure like the underworld pearl was simply too high. Moreover, there were only 8 of them in the entire Tiger Lurking City. Green Sparrow, what's the trial in Tiger Crouching City? Lin Sun booked a quiet room in an independent space in an inn. The trial in this city is very simple. You just need to collect 5,000 kilograms of green mark golden gangstone for the governor's mansion, which is a kind of divine material used to refine a high-grade emperor treasure. It can be collected in an ancient relic tens of thousands of miles away from this city. Green Sparrow said without hesitation. However, this kind of, or is extremely scattered. It will take a lot of time to collect 5,000 kilograms. Oh, Lin Sun said. Can you buy it in the market? Green Sparrow said. I'm afraid it's very difficult. Everyone knows that it's a necessary divine material to pass the trial. Even if someone sells it, the price is bound to be extremely high. Lin Sun thought for a while and said, "Let's buy it first. If we can't collect it, it's not too late to collect it later." "By the way, did you recognize the green-robed woman?" Lin Sun asked. Green Sparrow suddenly sneered and said, "In the eternal world, who doesn't know her?" There was a trace of indescribable meaning in her voice. Dugu Yuran? Lin Sun was lost in thought. This name was quite extraordinary. "Who is she?" Lin Sun asked. "You are her savior. Why don't you ask her yourself?" Green Sparrow was obviously a little abnormal, as if she didn't want to talk about things related to Dugu Yuran. "Savior? Even if I didn't do anything at that time, this woman has the means to solve the problem." Lin Sun's dark eyes were deep. Although the assassination at that time happened extremely suddenly and quickly, he keenly noticed that even though this woman seemed to be in a panic in the most dangerous situation, there was no fear or panic on her face. Obviously, she had a trump card that could solve the danger. The reason why he took action was nothing more than to protect himself. After all, if the power of that sword was completely broken out, he, who was next to Dugu Yuran, would also be implicated. "It's good that you understand," Green Sparrow said, "not to mention that assassin, even Peng Qianhe, who you saw just now, may not be able to hurt this woman. In short, her identity is very special. You just need to remember not to get too close to her. Otherwise, I'm afraid there will be many people like Peng Tianxiang who will kill you." "What's her background?" Lin Sun frowned. The more Green Sparrow said, the more curious he became. Green Sparrow said impatiently, "Why don't you find out yourself? I can only tell you that the family behind this woman has always been in a relationship of competition and confrontation with the family of my miss. Do you understand now?" Lin Sun said, "Oh, I don't understand." Green Sparrow said grumpily, "It's better that you don't understand, so I don't have to waste my breath." Just as they were conversing, a string of bells hanging in the room suddenly rang, producing a pleasant tinkling sound. This was a copper bell condensed by the power of prohibition, which meant that an outsider had come to visit. Lin Sun was in a daze. He got up and opened the prohibition, hearing a hearty and enthusiastic voice outside the room. "I'm Peng Tianxiang. Sorry to disturb you. Are you in?" Lin Sun's eyes flickered. Why did this guy come here? Did he intend to threaten him and prevent him from contacting Dugu Yuran? As he was thinking, Lin Sun opened the door and saw the tall and handsome Peng Tianxiang in a purple robe. Peng Tianxiang looked ashamed. Before Lin Sun said anything, he had already cupped his hands to salute and said, "When we were outside the city, my words were quite disrespectful. I hope you won't take it to heart." Lin Sun was surprised and said, "You don't come here to apologize, do you?" Peng Tianxiang looked serious and sincere. "On the one hand, I'm here to apologize. On the other hand, I want to invite you to a banquet." "A banquet?" Lin Sun was puzzled. Peng Tianxiang smiled mysteriously and said, "Yes, a banquet that only belongs to peerless figures like me. Ordinary people are not qualified to attend it at all. I might as well reveal something to you first. At that time, a shocking secret will be revealed at the banquet." Chapter 2563. Lin couldn't help but look at Peng Tianxiang in surprise. When they first met, Peng Tianxiang was arrogant and haughty. But now his attitude changed all of a sudden, and he became enthusiastic and hospitable, which made Lin mutter in his heart. What was going on? "Fellow practitioner, I know you must hold a grudge against me, but you must believe that I'm here to apologize sincerely," Peng Tianxiang hurriedly said. Lin thought for a while and suddenly said with a faint smile, "Are you here to pursue Dugu Yuran?" Peng Tianxiang couldn't help but be shocked. What a sharp insight this guy had. "Sure enough, I can't hide it from you." Peng Tianxiang showed a bitter smile. "To tell you the truth, I've been in love with her for a long time. I've been fascinated by her charm and care about her wholeheartedly. As the saying goes, concern leads to confusion. When we were outside the city gate, I accidentally offended you because of that." After a pause, he continued, "This time, I'm here to ask for your forgiveness. After all, you're the savior of Yuran. If she knows what I've done, maybe she'll have a better impression of me. At the end of his speech, he sighed endlessly with emotion. Lin showed a look of understanding. This was reasonable, he said with a smile. You're really considerate, but I'm afraid I can't help you. Besides, I have to collect Greenmark Goldenstone to prepare for passing the trial. Before Lin finished, Peng Tianxiang waved his hand heroically and said, As long as you're willing to attend the banquet with me, the trial is nothing. As he said, he took out a purple jade token and handed it to Lin. Fellow practitioner, this is the pass token that can be exchanged after passing the trial. Take it. Lin couldn't help being moved and said, How can I accept it? Peng Tianxiang smiled. It's just a token. Just take it as a token of my sincerity. He gave the token to Lin without saying anything. Then I'll accept it. Lin laughed. He didn't expect that passing the trial would be solved in this way. Peng Tianxiang also laughed heartily. Just then, why are you here? A voice that was as sweet as the sounds of nature rang out. Not far away, Dugu, who wore an azure robe, had a slender figure, and was beautiful and otherworldly, walked over unhurriedly. Her crystalline and translucent pitch-black starry eyes were suffused with a trace of surprise, while her beautiful brows frowned slightly. Peng Tianxiang was stunned as well, and he said, You ran. Didn't you return to the inn to rest? Dugu Yuren's expression was as tranquil as water as he replied, Do I need to report to you what I want to do at any time? Peng Tianxiang hurriedly smiled apologetically and said, You ran. Don't misunderstand. I'm here to apologize to this fellow Taoist. After all, this fellow Taoist is your benefactor. As the host, how can I not express my gratitude? As he spoke, he looked at Lin Sun with a smile. Lin Sun understood tacitly and said, Yes, Brother Peng is sincere. He not only gave me the token of passing the trial, but also invited me to attend the banquet. Everything he did was to express his apology, which made me feel flattered. This was the so-called returning a plum for a peach. Dugu Yuren was stunned. He couldn't help but take another look at Peng Tianxiang and said, I didn't expect you to be so attentive. It was just a few words, but it made Peng Tianxiang feel refreshed and excited. He even felt that his eyes were full of tears. These days, he had spent a lot of effort on Dugu Yuren, but all he got was resistance and perfunctory. And now, Dugu Yuren had finally praised him. Even if it was just a word, it made Peng Tianxiang feel that he had finally seen the light. For a moment, he smiled and said, It's my duty, my duty. I just want to share some of your burdens. Dugu Yuren frowned imperceptibly, which made Peng Tianxiang's heart skip a beat. He immediately shut up and thought of the advice of his third uncle, Peng Qianhe, that going too far was as bad as not going far enough. He immediately stepped aside and said, Yuren, you talk first. I'll go to the Castellan mansion to ask if the identity of the assassin has been found out. Then he cupped his hands and said to Lin Sun with a smile, Fellow Taoist, I'll send someone to invite you to attend the banquet in the evening. Don't miss it. After that, he turned around and left in a natural and unrestrained manner. Lin Sun couldn't help but be surprised. This guy seemed to be enlightened. Fellow Taoist, do you want me to talk to you here? Dugu Yuren looked up at Lin Sun and joked. Lin Sun sighed in his heart. After listening to Cyan Sparrow's words, he really didn't want to have anything to do with the girl in front of him. If those lascivious women around her knew it, it would cause countless troubles. After thinking for a while, he said, Girl, if you also come to apologize, you don't have to. In fact, I'm afraid you also know in your heart that even if I didn't do anything in that assassination, you would have been able to get out of danger. Dugu Yuren's eyes lit up and she smiled. It seems that you seem to be on guard against me. Well, I won't force you, but we will definitely meet again. After that, she turned around and left. Lin Sun was stunned for a moment. Then he shook his head and closed the door. Outside the inn, Dugu Yuren took a deep breath. She had taken the initiative to express her gratitude to Lin Sun twice in a row, but she was refused twice in a row, which made her confused. They had never met each other before. Why would this person be on guard against her like this? What a strange guy. After thinking for a while, she quietly flipped her palm, and a light green jade mirror appeared. A figure appeared on it, and it was Lin Sun's real face. "Umph, Ling Xuanzi, do you really think that you can fool me with that kind of disguise?" Dugi Yuren's lips curled up slightly. "I'd like to see if you still dare to refuse me next time." As she thought about it, she put away the jade mirror and said with a cold gaze, "Come out." Peng Tianxiang walked out of a tea house nearby with an awkward expression and said, "Yuran, I'm just here to drink tea. I don't." Dugi Yuran turned her head and looked straight at Peng Tianxiang. She said, "I already know what you're thinking, but I have to remind you that all those who want me like you do will encounter a lot of trouble without exception." "I understand." Peng Tianxiang's expression was serious. There was no way he wouldn't know that there were countless outstanding people chasing after Dugi Yuran in the eternal true world. They treated her like an immortal and surrounded her like stars surrounding the moon. There were also some dazzling monsters and peerless prodigies among them. Be it their background or their Tao, they were not weaker than Peng Tianxiang. In fact, they might even surpass him. This also meant that if he wanted to chase after Dugi Yuran, he would first have to consider the competition between rivals in love. "You don't understand." Dugi Yuran sighed softly. There was a slightly disappointed look on her face as she walked away. "How can I not understand?" As he watched Dugi Yuran leave, the light in Peng Tianxiang's eyes flickered. "But no matter what, I will not give up. No matter who fights with me, I will not back down. I will make you understand who is the best to you." The night was as dark as ink. The city lord's mansion. It was brightly lit with lanterns and colored banners. At the center of the city lord's mansion was a huge green lake. The scenery was beautiful, and it was shrouded in spirit aura all year round. It was very lively today because many peerless great emperors had come to this place for a gathering. The lake was green, brilliant, and ethereal. It was enshrouded in a magnificent mist of spirit aura all year round. Numerous beautiful hills stood towering nearby the jade-green lake, and they flowed with multicolored light. They were like numerous halberds that shot through the sky and pierced into the shore of the lake. Ancient divine trees towered into the sky and took root in the spirit mountains around the lake. There were also pavilions, silver waterfalls, and flowing springs. The scenery was very artistic. Lin Sun stood at the side of the green lake and looked around. He couldn't help but nod. This was indeed a rare place with good feng shui. The spirit aura was dense, and the Great Way was rising. In an antique pavilion not far away, Peng Tianxiang was talking with a group of peerless great emperors. They were drinking and chatting merrily. There were men and women among these peerless great emperors. All of them had extraordinary bearings. Each of them had their own power and demeanor. They were all extraordinary. Most of them were like Lin Sun. They came from different universes in the boundless world. Even when facing an immortal emperor like Peng Tianxiang, these people behaved calmly and didn't show any signs of flattery. This was the confidence of great Emperor Zhu Yun. It was not something an ordinary great emperor could compare to. "Brother Jin, come. Let me introduce you to these people." Peng Tianxiang suddenly stood up and greeted Lin Sun with a warm smile. Lin Sun had a natural aversion to this kind of gathering. His main purpose for coming here was to see what Peng Tianxiang's shocking secret was. Because Ling Xuanzi's identity was on the wanted list, Lin Sun could only use the identity of Old Toad Jin Dui. "Everyone, this is Taoist Jin Dui. He's a peerless 7th-level great emperor with incredible battle strength. It's all thanks to him that Miss Yuran was saved." Peng Tianxiang introduced with a smile. The peerless great emperors looked at Lin Sun and nodded with a smile. Lin Sun greeted them one by one. "Brother Jin, please sit down. Once everyone's here, I'll announce an important matter to everyone. Now, I have to go welcome an extremely honorable guest." Peng Tianxiang's smile was mysterious. As he spoke, he turned around and left. Lin Sun sat down casually and drank by himself. He was not interested in making friends with anyone. Seeing this, the others gave up on the idea of chatting with him. They were all peerless great emperors. Who wouldn't have a bit of pride? Lin Sun, on the other hand, was free. Not long after, there was a commotion in the distance. Dugi Yuran, who wore a green robe and had a slender and delicate figure, and she was dressed as a man, walked over from afar. Under the illumination of the dazzling lights, her clear and beautiful snow-white face was suffused with an absolutely beautiful and illusory sheen. She held a feather fan in her hand and walked with light steps. Although she was dressed as a man, she had a unique elegance and beauty that made her stand out from the crowd. Lin Sun was startled. Didn't this woman dislike Peng Tianxiang? Why was she here? Could the distinguished guest that Peng Tianxiang was talking about be her? As Lin Sun pondered, the peerless great emperors in the pavilion stopped talking and stood up to welcome her. Everyone had a respectful expression on their faces. Of course, there was also curiosity, admiration, amazement, and passion. P.S. I was really depressed when I was criticized for the plot being lousy yesterday. After today's update, I want to know if those critics were still lousy. Well, if nothing goes wrong, there will be a new chapter this Sunday, and it will continue to be updated. Chapter 2564. The originally bustling and clamorous atmosphere became tranquil at this moment. She, who was dressed in a green robe, took away all the light as soon as she walked over, and all the light converged on her body. There were also a few extremely beautiful empresses present, and whether it was temperament or charm, they could be said to be the best in the world. But at this moment, when facing Divi Yuran, who walked over from afar, they couldn't help but feel stunned. The latter had an innate noble aura, and although she was dressed as a man, she was peerless and incomparable. At this moment, Lin Sun, who was originally sitting there, stood up as well. He didn't want to be unconventional and stand out from the crowd. Yuran, please take a seat quickly. At the side, Peng Tianxiang accompanied her step by step and personally led the way for Divi Yuran, inviting her to sit at the main seat. However, when Divi Yuran walked to Lin Sun's side, she suddenly blinked her clear eyes and said with a light smile, "What did I say today? We will meet again," and it really came true. Before Lin Sun could speak, she turned to Peng Tianxiang and said, "You're the host of today's gathering, so you should sit at the main seat. I'll sit here." As she spoke, she slowly sat down on the empty seat beside Lin Sun. Everyone was startled. Peng Tianxiang glanced at Lin Sun, then glanced at Divi Yuran, and laughed heroically after a while. All right. Everyone, please take a seat." As he spoke, he sat down as well. Only when everyone sat down did he say with a smile, "Almost everyone has arrived. I presume everyone has long been curious about the shocking secret that I spoke of. Now, I won't keep you in suspense. This matter is related to the god's relic outside the 49th pass of immortality." His words attracted the attention of all the people in the area. Only Divi Yuran's expression was calm, as if she had already guessed what the secret Peng Tianxiang was about to speak of was. "I just learned from the clan that some unknown eternal god clan spread a piece of news not long ago, saying that the legendary god's battlefield will appear in the god's relic in at least 10 to 30 years. Peng Tianxiang's voice was low. At that time, only those that leave their names on the realm combat stele will have the qualifications to enter the battlefield of the gods. According to that piece of information, anyone that's able to become eminent in the battlefield of the gods will have a chance to obtain a supreme fortune." Everyone was shocked, and they were completely attracted by this piece of news. "May I ask, Brother Peng, what sort of supreme fortune this is?" Someone couldn't help but ask. Peng Tianxiang sneered. "I wouldn't dare to say that. However, I've heard that this is the most precious fortune left behind in the great 1,000 battle domains after the destruction of the previous era. The most precious." Everyone was acutely aware of the difference in this fortune. One had to know that even though the vast 1,000 battle domain was filled with unfathomable dangers and many battlefields, there were also many unknown opportunities and treasures. On the other hand, if the fortune related to the battlefield of the gods could be described as the most precious, then it was obvious how extraordinary it would be. Everyone, don't be happy too early. If you want to participate in the battlefield of the gods, you must first leave your name on the realm combat stele. Just this stage alone will be able to eliminate most of the strong. Peng Tianxiang reminded him. And even if they have the right to join, they will have to face competition from many terrifying people. Based on what I know, There are quite a number of peerless and peerless people in eternal true world who have already made preparations to join. His words were like a bucket of cold water poured over everyone's heads, causing their expressions to change. All of them were peerless great emperors, so they were naturally not worried about whether or not they could leave their names on the realm combat steel. But if they were asked to fight against the peerless people from the eternal true world, then the pressure would be extraordinary. Even though most of them came from the great thousand battle domains and could be said to be the leaders of the world, how could they not know how terrifying the peerless people from the eternal true world were? Just like Peng Tianxiang, a member of the immortal Emperor Peng family, they had to respect him. As for Duge Yuran, his status was so noble that even they felt ashamed of their inferiority. He was an existence that they could not hope to reach. Lin Sun could not help but frown. It was not that he felt pressured, but that he could not understand. Just what sort of serendipity existed in the battlefield of the gods that even the peerless people from the eternal true world would want to participate. Was it related to the previous aeon? What? Are you curious as well, Ling Xuanzi? At that moment, Duge Yuran sent a message to Lin Sun. Her clear voice was tinged with a hint of mockery. Lin Sun's body stiffened in a barely noticeable manner, but his expression did not change as he replied, "Miss, so you've already seen through my identity. You do indeed have a discerning eye." Duge Yuran raised her wine cup and took a sip before saying softly, "Fellow Taoist, you don't have to worry. I'm not that bored to expose your identity at this moment. After all, you're my savior." Lin Sun sighed in his heart. The Cyan Sparrow was right. This woman was definitely trouble, and whoever got involved with her would be in big trouble. Duge Yuran asked, "Fellow Taoist, I'm quite curious about the ancient path of the galaxy. I heard that you came from there. Have you heard of a peerless great emperor called Lin Daoyuan?" Lin Sun was silent for a moment and said, "What on earth do you want to know?" Duge Yuran smiled beautifully and said, "Well, it's not the right time to talk about this. If there's a chance in the future, I'll ask for your advice." Although they were communicating by voice transmission, Peng Tianxiang's eyes couldn't hide it, especially when he saw the bright smile on Duge Yuran's face. He couldn't help but burn with jealousy and almost couldn't suppress the anger in his heart. However, thinking of his third uncle Peng Qin's exhortations, Peng Tianxiang still held back. After calming down, he said with a smile, "Don't be discouraged. Today, in addition to telling you about this matter, there's another good thing to share with you." Everyone's eyes focused on him. Even Lin Sun and Duge Yuran were no exception. Feeling Duge Yuran's gaze on him, Peng Tianxiang felt much better and immediately became energetic. But just when he was about to speak, suddenly there was a deafening rumble. In the distant night, a dazzling silver chariot crushed the void and flew over. The speed was so fast that the chariot emitted bursts of silver light like flames. In the brilliance, there was also a frightening aura spreading. The nearby green lake water fluctuated violently, and the blue light shot into the sky, causing an amazing phenomenon. On the surrounding spiritual mountains and in the nearby areas, there were many guards and maids of the Castellan's mansion. At this moment, they couldn't help but be frightened. This was the Castellan's mansion. Who dared to drive a chariot here? For the first time, Peng Qianhe, who had been sitting in the Castellan's mansion, was also alarmed. He appeared out of thin air with a gloomy and cold expression. However, when he saw the chariot clearly, the gloomy expression on his face suddenly turned into surprise, as if he couldn't believe it. With a swish, a golden light spread out and fell from the chariot, forming a divine rainbow, piercing through the sky. Then, two figures walked out of the chariot. One was sacred and pure, shrouded in golden flames, like a king descending to the world. His aura was extremely arrogant and outstanding. He had a head of long golden hair, and even his eyes were like two golden suns, frightening to the extreme. Rong Xiangli. Inside the pavilion, Peng Tianxiang's face immediately darkened, and the wine cup in his hand was silently crushed into powder. Rong Xiangli, a peerless character from the Rong clan of the Immortal Emperor clan, an anomaly among the great emperors. Many people gasped. Was this Rong Xiangli? His aura was even more terrifying than the legends. It was as if an ancient god of war had descended, looking down on the world and all heroes. Beside him, there was another person who was wrapped in strands of chaotic air, revealing only a blurry silhouette. His eyes were as bright as the sun, and when they opened and closed, divine light split the sky. Zhu Lin. When he saw this person, Peng Tianxiang could no longer remain calm, and his eyes narrowed. Others might not know, but he knew very well that Zhu Lin was a heaven's chosen from the Zhu clan of the Immortal Emperor clan. He was known as the peerless great emperor of the Zhu clan, and his bravery was unparalleled. Compared to Rong Xiangli, he was not at all inferior. Today, the two of them had come on a chariot, and their goal was obvious. The place was silent. The peerless great emperors from the vast thousand worlds were bewildered, but Lin Sun was very calm, because he didn't know the identity of these two people who had suddenly arrived. However, even if he knew, it wouldn't affect him much. But Lin Sun still noticed that Dugi Yuran, who was beside him, sighed lightly, and a trace of imperceptible annoyance appeared between her brows. I didn't expect that you two young friends would come at this time. You've really surprised me. At this moment, Peng China smiled and went up to greet them. Obviously, Rong Xiangli and Zhu Lin's identities were extraordinary, so even he, the ancestor of the great emperor clan, had to treat them with respect and personally greet them. The two of us came abruptly, so we were a bit rash. Please don't blame us, senior, Rong Xiangli said with a smile. He didn't seem arrogant at all, and he returned the greeting humbly. Zhu Lin only nodded, then looked at Dugi Yuran in the pavilion. In an instant, his indifferent and arrogant expression disappeared, and a warm smile appeared on his face as he walked over. Miss Yuran, you're really here. Zhu Lin directly ignored the other people in the pavilion, even Peng Tianxiang, and came to Dugi Yuran's side. Peng Qianhe, who was watching the scene from a distance, had an imperceptible flash of coldness in his eyes, and then he sighed inwardly. The current situation was not under his control at all. Even if he was the lord of the city governor's mansion, he couldn't oppress these two nobles with his power. At this moment, Peng Tianxiang couldn't bear it anymore. He stood up and said with cold eyes, Zhu Lin, this is a private banquet. Don't you think it's rude of you to come uninvited? Zhu Lin sneered. Peng Tianxiang, are you going to drive me away? His eyes were full of provocation. Peng Tianxiang was about to say something, but Peng Qianhe, who had rushed over, said first, You're a guest. There's no need to be so polite. Young friend, please take a seat. Senior, you're right. We're here as guests, not to make trouble. At this time, Rong Xiangli also walked into the pavilion with a smile. This made Peng Tianxiang's face even more gloomy. Chapter 2565. Although it was just a few words, Zhu Lin's domineering aura overwhelmed everyone present, making them feel as if they were sitting on pins and needles. Rong Xiangli seemed to be smiling, but there was power in his actions, which also made people feel oppressed. Even Peng Qianhe, the ancestor of One Tao, did not dare to offend these two people. This made people sigh in their hearts. The eternal world was too terrible, and Peng Tianxiang was enough to make people respect him. But now, two more powerful people had come, and neither of them took Peng Tianxiang seriously. The atmosphere was gloomy. Dugi Yuran could not help but frown. He glanced at Zhu Lin and said, This is Peng family's territory. Don't you think it's too rude? If someone else had said this, Zhu Lin would have slapped him. But facing Dugi Yuran, he nodded with a bright smile. You're right. I'll apologize to Peng Tianxiang right now. Then he cupped his hands to Peng Tianxiang perfunctorily. Peng Xiang, I was a little rude just now. Peng Tianxiang snorted coldly, obviously holding back his anger. Zhu Lin did not care at all. He glanced at the seat next to Dugi Yuran, and then looked at Lin Sun again. He smiled, showing his white teeth, and said, Fellow Taoist, why don't you give up your seat? His tone was frivolous, direct, and domineering. For a moment, all eyes were on Lin Sun. Peng Tianxiang suddenly pounded the table and said, Zhu Lin, you are too presumptuous. Brother Jean is my friend. Why should he give up his seat to you? Zhu Lin ignored Peng Tianxiang and only stared at Lin Sun. A trace of coldness gradually rose in his eyes, and he said, "You don't want to give me face?" Lin Sun had always wanted to be an outsider, but now it was obvious that he could not stay out of the matter at all. He could not help but sigh in his heart. Dugu Yuran, what a troublemaker. He was just a seat. Just because he sat with her, he suffered this unexpected disaster. Who could he reason with? However, although Lin Sun had a good temper, he was a ruthless and decisive person. How could he shrink back at this time? He raised his wine cup and drained it in one gulp before he said, "Face is earned by oneself, not given by others. If I were you, I would clearly know that the owner of this place doesn't welcome me, but I would absolutely not act like you, sticking close to this place and being despised for no reason." The words shocked the peak martial monarchs. They almost could not believe their ears. Peng Tianxiang was stunned. Although he felt that Lin Sun's words were very pleasant, he knew that it was destined to offend Zhu Lin. Peng Qianhe had a strange look in his eyes, but he remained silent. He would not get involved in such a matter for an outsider. Rong Xiangli couldn't help but look at Lin Sun in surprise. Zhu Lin's face became gloomy at once, and his eyes were full of killing intent. The nearby air was stagnant, and a murderous spirit seemed to oppress Lin Sun. Dugu Yuran suddenly said, "If you dare to make a move, don't blame me for being ruthless." Looking at her expression again, it was as cold as frost. Zhu Lin was stunned and asked in astonishment, "Yuran, who is he to you? Why do you protect him so much?" "Brother Jean Duyi is Yuran's savior, but you want to force Brother Jean to give up his seat. Obviously, you intend to embarrass Yuran." Peng Tianxiang sneered and seized the opportunity to make sarcastic remarks. Seeing that Dugu Yuran didn't deny it, Zhu Lin's face became gloomy. He gritted his teeth and said, "I was wrong before, but this man humiliated me like that. I can't let it go. What else do you want?" Dugu Yuran frowned. "Apologize," Zhu Lin said without hesitation. "As long as he lowers his head and admits his mistake, I can let bygones be bygones. Otherwise, I can only teach him how to be a man." Brother Jin's words were really hurtful. Rong Xiangli, who was not far away, said indifferently. At this time, Peng Qianhe said to Lin Sun with a smile, "It's just a trifle. Why don't you take a step back and apologize to Child Zhu Lin? It's not worthwhile to make everyone unhappy because of this, right?" This was tantamount to smoothing things over. But Lin Sun said without hesitation, "Impossible." He had been in the vast thousand battles domain until now, killed when Xiaoheng of the One family, and Heng Tianxua, the ancestor of the Tao. When had he ever been afraid of anyone? How dare a guy who came out of nowhere yell at him like this? He was overestimating himself. Lin Sun was indeed afraid of trouble, but when he encountered trouble, he wouldn't let himself endure it. If he became timid when he encountered something, even if he went to the eternal world, he wouldn't be able to lift his head up high for the rest of his life. There was silence in the field. Everyone was surprised. No one had expected that Jean Duyi would be so unyielding. He didn't intend to give in at all. Even Peng Tianxiang couldn't help but admire Jean Duyi. He didn't know that this guy was so unyielding before. Some people showed pity, some gloated, and some sighed in their hearts. Everyone knew that there was no turning back, and Jean Duyi was bound to suffer. Peng Qianhe smiled and said no more. Rong Xiangli frowned, his eyes shining with a thought-provoking luster. At the same time, Dugu Yuran sent a voice transmission to Lin Sun. "I've been unhappy with this guy for a long time. Don't worry, beat him up. If anything happens, I'll take care of it for you." There was a hint of annoyance in his voice. Lin Sun was speechless. "This is all because of you." He was even more determined to leave Hidden Tiger City as soon as the banquet was over, and stay as far away from this woman as possible. I gave you face, but you don't want it." At this time, Zhu Lin's killing intent was surging. His eyes glowed with a strange and terrifying green light, which suddenly pierced towards Lin Sun like a pair of green divine swords, directly stabbing Lin Sun's soul. An ordinary Emperor Realm expert would probably have a mental breakdown after being stared at like this. Green eyes, sword pupil. Peng Qianhe was shocked. He didn't expect that Zhu Lin would use such a strange and terrifying secret skill as soon as he attacked. What? Really green eyes, sword pupil? This is a rare and terrifying talent that can penetrate the soul and shatter the state of mind. How terrifying! Such a strange and mysterious talent actually exists. There was a burst of exclamations nearby. They couldn't stay calm, and it really shocked them a lot. It was said that a talent like Green Eyes Sword Pupil was a mysterious talent that would only be born among hundreds of millions of cultivators. No matter in the boundless world or the eternal true world, people with extraordinary talents were not rare. Usually, the more terrifying the talent they possessed, the more terrifying the cultivation they could obtain. And some people with rare talents would even erupt with rare divine abilities after they became emperors at the peak. For example, talents like Body of Five Accumulations, Feather Light Spirit Body, Taoist Embryo Dharma Body, and Magic-Breaking Warblood were all extremely rare. Every one of them would become a great figure in the future. They were regarded as the almighty who were born with the destiny of heaven, and they were many times more powerful than ordinary people in the same realm. The Blue-Eye Sword Pupil was such a rare talent. A trace of seriousness appeared in Dugu Yuren's beautiful eyes. It seemed that she didn't expect that Zhu Lin would use such a ruthless and terrifying method as soon as he attacked. Obviously, he intended to destroy Lin's son. Kneel down, apologize, and repent to me, Zhu Lin shouted, and his eyes became more and more evil. The green light was cold, like a divine sword, and he looked directly at Lin's son, as if he wanted to control Lin Sun's whole body and soul. Dugu Yuran was about to say something, but Rong Xiangli said with a smile, "Don't worry, Yuran. Zhu Lin has a sense of propriety. He won't let fellow practitioner Jin's life be in danger." Before he could finish his words, Lin Sun suddenly spat out a word from his lips. "You're right. Get lost." It was like a roar of a divine dragon, and also like the roar of Thunder God in the ninth heaven. It was earth-shattering. With Lin Sun as the center, circles of sound waves spread out. Countless space fragments exploded on the spot and turned into countless sharp arrows, stabbing directly at Zhu Lin's eyes. This was a secret method of using the Great Way. At the moment Lin Sun spoke, all his power of cultivation had been poured into it. Although it was just a word, it was actually branded with an extremely terrifying secret of killing. The most amazing thing was that in other people's ears, Lin Sun's "Get Lost" sounded like a deadly note in Zhu Lin's ears. Moreover, even Zhu Lin himself didn't expect that Lin Sun could still resist under the attack of his talent power. Suddenly, Zhu Lin suffered a terrible impact. Bang! Bang! Zhu Lin's eyes suddenly exploded and turned into two bloody holes. The blood that sprayed out from the exploding eyeballs caused the air to be filled with a terrible stench that reeked of blood. "Ah!" Zhu Lin screamed like a pig being slaughtered. His whole body was trembling. He covered his eyes with his hands and howled, "My eyes, my eyes!" As he screamed, he kept running his power, trying to repair his eyes. But no matter how hard he tried, he could no longer condense his power. Now, everyone could see that Lin Sun's "Get Lost" actually destroyed Zhu Lin's talent power. In fact, the syllable that came out of Lin Sun's lips contained infinite mystery. With all his cultivation, even an emperor ancestor would be seriously injured if he was caught off guard, let alone Zhu Lin. Although the blue-eye sword pupil was powerful and could penetrate the opponent's mind, how could it hurt Lin Sun? All of a sudden, Zhu Lin was caught unprepared. "You wanted to break my mind, so I destroyed your talent. It's fair to pay back." Lin Sun looked indifferent and said casually, "This is also a lesson for you. Don't stare at people casually in the future. It's easy to explode." There was a dead silence. Only Lin Sun's voice echoed. Everyone was shocked, including Emperor Ancestor Peng Qianhe. Just a voice broke the blue-eyes sword pupil. So strong. No wonder he was so tough. It turned out that he was fearless. Since he's crippled his talent, the clan behind him will definitely not let the matter rest. How cruel! All the emperors present were great emperors. But if they were in Lin Sun's position, they wouldn't dare to do so at all. let alone have such thoughts. Therefore, they were shocked by Lin Sun's decisive and ruthless counterattack. Their scalps were numb, and they looked at each other with pale faces. Peng Tianxiang's heart was also in turmoil, as if he didn't know Lin Sun at all. It completely refreshed his cognition and imagination. He even couldn't help thinking that if he offended Lin Sun outside the city gate, would he also be... Peng Tianxiang shivered and didn't dare to think about it anymore.